Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of the Universe Within podcast. This episode of the show is being sponsored by the Amazonian Plant Healing Center, the Temple of the Way of Light. Temple is a place I've worked at for a number of years, I think 7-8 years now, so I can really attest to the quality of the work they do. Even personally, I've worked with probably thousands of people now, and it's really amazing seeing people coming down and having life-transforming experiences. The temple works with the Shipibo lineage of ayahuasca, curanderismo, or medicine work. They work with 4 doctors, curanderos, healers, 2 to 3 facilitators. There's hueseros, vegetalistas, which are bone doctors, massage people, herbalists. There's a pre-ceremony yoga teacher, and it's just a really amazing support staff, which is really conducive to allowing people to come down and having the experience that they're hopefully looking for, whether that's healing, learning, understanding, releasing old patterns, traumas, really whatever one is looking to do. So if one is interested in working with the temple, working with ayahuasca, check out their website at templeofthewayoflight.org. There'll be a link in the show notes for that. Also, myself and my colleague Marav Artsy will be running dietas, which is one of the traditional ways that people learn from plants experientially. So we'll be running 1, 2, 3-week diets. The first one is scheduled coming up pretty soon, March 3rd to the 19th. And the second one we have scheduled is May 1st to the 17th. Those will be here in the Sacred Valley of Peru, near Urubamba. And if you're interested in that, it's a really amazing opportunity to go deeper into this plant work and to experience the teaching, the learning, and the healing of plants directly. So if you'd like more information on that, you can check out my website at nicotianarustica.org or Marav's website at tobaccodiets.com. I also interviewed Marav a number of episodes ago. I think it was maybe episode number 28. So if you're interested to learn more about her, you can listen to that episode as well. So today my guest is my friend Ute. I actually met Ute working at the center, the Temple of the Way of Light. She came down originally, I believe she said as a work exchange, and then eventually she started facilitating there. I've worked with Ute for a long time. I really enjoy working with her. I think she's an amazing woman. She has a lot of knowledge. She spent a long time working in Germany, in Berlin, I guess you'd call them mental health institutions, working with people who were undergoing mental illnesses, psychoses, things like that. And I think she has a really beautiful way of seeing what's going on. She has a really beautiful way of working with people. She's done a number of diets herself. She's worked with one of the really strong Shipibo families, dieting. And I think she just brings a really well-balanced, grounded, and really intricate perspective into her work. So for me, it was really a pleasure getting to sit down and talk to her, to reconnect with her, to learn more about her story. And I think you all will get a lot out of this episode. And as always, if you're able to help to support this episode, this show, that's a really big help to me. Patreon is a really good option. There's a link in the show notes, and for just a few dollars a month, you can subscribe to the show, and in return, you get a lot of added benefits, things like Q&As, early access to shows, bonus material, extended footage, things like that. So that's a really big help to me to continue to be able to produce new content, to bring on these guests, and to be able to share with you. There's also the option of direct donating via PayPal. There's also a link in the show notes. And then if you're not able to do that, simply going on the YouTube page, subscribing to the show, liking the video, turning on the notification bell, that really helps to build the audience, to eventually get it out to a bigger audience, and helping with the algorithms and things like that. And then with the audio, the audio version going on Apple Podcasts, also subscribing to the show and leaving a starred rating and a short review is a really big help. So to everyone who has supported the show via Patreon, via PayPal, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. And to all the people who've subscribed and are continuing to listen and to support it that way, thank you very much. So I think that's it. And without further ado, here is my conversation with Ute. So welcome, Ute. It's nice to see you.
Good to see you, Jason.
So you're smoking a mapacho.
I'm smoking a mapacho. I'm not smoking daily mapacho, but sometimes when I feel like I want to connect to presence or to a deeper knowing, or also being more guided with my dietas, and I like to smoke mapacho.
And this is a puro. It's pure tobacco.
It's pure tobacco. It's the leaf is from the tobacco, and it's pure tobacco. Probably you can talk more about tobacco than me.
Yeah. Well, cool. So I met you like a number of the guests working at the Amazonian Plant Healing Center, the Temple of the Way of Light.
Yeah.
I don't know if I remember the first time I met you, but I guess maybe you would come for a training facilitation, or I don't know if you remember.
I remember.
Okay.
I remember actually when I saw you the first time, it was in a coffee in Iquitos, and it was 2015, but I think you don't remember. I said it to you another time and you didn't remember. It was when I did a 3 months voluntary job in the temple.
Okay.
And you were just in a deep process of dieting, and you shared your flat, your apartment in Iquitos with a guy.
Yeah.
Silvio. And I visited him and I met you. Yeah, but I think it was during your tobacco dietas.
Could have been, yeah.
But then, we met when I came to the temple to start working there. And this was in 2018.
Oh, wow.
Beginning
was
of
that
2018.
Okay. Huh, it seems like you've been there much longer.
For me also it feels like that, yeah.
So what is your...
Was it 17?
I think it must have been earlier than... 2018 was very recent.
No, it was 18.
Yeah? Okay.
Yeah.
So what is a bit about your background? You're originally from Germany, and what led you eventually to come down to the Amazon and start working with plants?
Yeah, I think this is a little bit a longer story, but
we have time. There's that.
Yeah. So what led me to the Amazon? I think there was like a personal reasons, and also like work-wise, I was interested. So personally, when I was like 14 years old, I started to be really interested in sacred plant medicine. But friends and me, we used it just being in nature, doing a fire. We didn't have people who explained us, hey, you can do a ceremony and you can actually learn with it. It was like more recreational, so-called experiences. So I dived into that with 14, 15 years old.
Wow.
Yeah, it was... I'm still a little bit nervous. It was very intense, and I got introduced to seeing energies and nature and patterns and connections.
Wow.
But the people around me, they often didn't experience it like that. They were speaking about hallucinations. And for me, there was always truth and deep experiences. And I didn't have someone really who could guide me. So I was by my own, and sometimes I was reading books, and I got confirmation in books. And I was like, wow, there's truth in it. So I got really, really interested in that. And I was always interested in humans and how do humans work. And I studied different areas in pedagogic, like education. And I like more the word pedagogía in Spanish, like in German, pädagogik. But I think pedagogic is not really much used in English, right?
Not so much, but it's used, yeah.
So I started to do my first practica in a psychiatric hospital when I was 18 or 19, because I was interested what's happening, with humans sometimes. How far can they go that they don't live their life anymore in their full potential, and what's happening in society that they say, okay, you have to go in a hospital. And I found it somehow fascinating when I was really young. And then
like going in a hospital, like if someone had a perceived mental illness.
Yeah. I was working with kids and teenagers. Also first with kids, because I was still myself quite young. And then I started to work with teenagers. I think when I was like 20, 21, 22, I was all in all 5-6 years there.
Wow.
Yeah. So when I started to work with teenagers, I got really interested in psychosis. And also it was very interesting in my personal life. I attracted somehow situations where people got into a psychosis. I was in a festival, I was somewhere next to me, someone went into that. So it was around. Sometimes good friends, what was of course very, very difficult and very scary. And when I worked then in the psychiatric hospital and I started to work in schools for so-called people with mental disabilities, I always had the feeling something is missing. Something is missing. And in my private life, experiencing with psychedelic plants and going deeper and seeing, things which were not really integrated in the Western society, it always made me curious. Where's the link? How can I connect that? And
did you notice like similarities between people who were in a state of psychosis or who found themselves in these mental hospitals?
It's a good question. Also the young people, like for the young people, I had often the feeling there's a missing link to spirituality. There's this everything needs to fit in a rational structure. I think I already could somehow sense that this can crack, and building cracks and separation, confusion. I mean, now, I experience it many times, that the trying and the need and the pressure to fit something in a linear, rational understanding builds confusion and can crack and can explode. But this is something I think I sensed already earlier, but I was not allowed to talk about. Like working, also later on I worked in Berlin in a home for teenagers, young adults after psychiatric hospitals to go back in life, like kind of integration, the sickness, illness, and finding connection again in society. And I remember I was, when a girl talked about, every night I see this older woman next to me and she wants to talk with me. I was not allowed when people had a bipolar or psychosis or schizophrenia thing, I was not allowed to talk with them about it. Yeah.
Why was that?
I think it's they said you are supporting the hallucinations. You don't go into the hallucinations. You talk about the practical things here, about this reality. So talking with them about their inner experiences was seen as I would support and go deeper in their sickness and their illness, in their delusions, in their hallucinations. And I had already their sense, hey, I mean, I'm not seeing the spirits and they talking to me, but who knows? I mean, it's a subjective experience, and to tell her she's not allowed to talk about and suppressing that didn't feel right. And I mean, I'm not a therapist. I studied, as said, pedagogic, and I was more there as a social worker, during the day, during the night, building the bridge to life, going with them to the different organizations, telling them they have to take their medication, their pills, what was always difficult for me. Not always. In some cases, it felt okay, but in some cases, it didn't feel right. Or, supporting them to go to school or to do their studies and cleaning their room, like these practical things. And we had our meetings with therapists, and it started that I was not telling them everything. Because I knew if I tell them that this young woman told me about the spirit she's seeing, then they would maybe give her more pills. And I felt like, hey, she's doing well, And these were like things where I felt like, wow, it's not anymore my full integrity.
Were the therapists kind of going into what the patient was describing, or was that also kind of...
I don't think so. I'm not sure, I have to say, but it's also a while ago now for me. But But as far as I know, no. It was not an approach where there are these other experiences, dimensions, spirituality, or whatever they experienced, that this was included. I think it would be so important, I mean, I hope there's a change now, and and more integration, and that's what I find with plant medicine and with shamanism, and building the bridge, to Western approaches and to the energy work with the plants. I mean, that both together, for me, there's so much gold in the linkage and in the exchange of these different approaches. But yeah, you asked me, how did I come to the Amazon? So this was one thing, I think it always was bubbling inside of me. Well, there is something else, like from the work perspective and from my deeper interest in understanding humans. And then I had my own issues. I had a lot of own issues. I was not aware so much about it, but it came to a point when I was around 30, 31, I realized, wow, I'm partying since I'm a teenager. And it takes over, control. Also it takes over. I plan my life around festivals, around parties. I lived in Berlin, where there's a lot of electronic playground, let's say. And they don't close after one night. You have like many days where you can be in a club and meeting people and dancing and listening to music. And I had the job which I had in this therapeutic home. I had a really, really, really good and nice job. And also I had like 9, I think, or 8 24-hour shifts. And the rest of the month was free. And I realized, wow, I wanted to learn about meditation, about yoga. I wanted to study new things. And I noticed, wow, I'm all the time partying. And I can't control it. So I realized there's something out of balance. And and I went to Thailand, where I often went. I took frequently like 2-3 months off to go to Koh Phangan. You also know this island. And I always went there to balance and to find back to myself and to connect. And I did that in 2013, and I ended up to be there 1 year. And I lived there I found a tambo, the bungalow, without water, without tap water, without electricity. And this was like, it came to me in a very magical way. I almost didn't pay rent because it was on a ground where there was a fight around the land, who is the owner, so no one was allowed to ask for rent. So I lived there by myself with a lot of spiders and snakes. It was very scary also, but I faced a lot through that, and having a little fire, doing my coffee in the morning. Could go down to the beach and meeting people and had nice restaurants, but I was on a ridge more up. It was beautiful, beautiful.
Where in Koh Phangan was that?
It was on the east side, between Wainam and, what is the name, Hatien, where the sanctuary as well is. Maybe now I did some advertisement. But it was in 2013. And there are also some playgrounds for music and dancing. So I was not completely isolated. I could also face the temptation to go partying, but also I could withdraw. So it was a huge transformation. A lot of emotions came up. I could see like a lot of patterns, and it was difficult. And also my English was really limited. So I was a lot by myself. I met amazing people, but until I understood, the others were faster. So this also brought a lot up, regarding connection and being by self and feeling separation. And before, I always was with people. I was a completely social person and always in groups of people. And so in that year, somehow it showed more and more up ayahuasca. I heard it. Oh, ayahuasca, but you're vomiting. And I was like, no, I don't want to do that. I take my mushrooms, or that's fine, and then it came up more and more, and I did in that time some theta healing courses. And I developed somehow my own way to connect and to do my meditation. And at some morning, I was sitting on my rock. I don't know if you know this, rocks close to the ocean and the coast and Koh Phangan, they are strong. And I was always sitting on this rock in the morning, watching at the blue ocean, And one morning, I never had this experience before, and I never had it after. But at this morning, I saw like a jungle, and I was like, is that here Thailand jungle, Kopangan? No, it was like Amazon jungle. And I saw somehow the wine from ayahuasca, and it was exactly the wording, you will go to Peru and work with ayahuasca. I was like, work with ayahuasca? What is that? And then I was questioning myself. I was like, do I create it? Is that my mind? Because in that time, I didn't know what to do. I knew I don't want to go back to Berlin. I knew that. But I also knew I need some money at some point again. So there was this time I felt a lot of pressure and very anxious to go back in society to Berlin. And I knew I always find a job. It was always easy. But I felt like, no, I can't do that. So when this showed up, it was like, okay, if this is true, if this is true, show me the way. Show me the way, and I will follow. And I will find out if it's an illusion, if it's something from my mind, some desires, projections. But if this is true, and it came really, really deep. And sometimes when I'm looking back now, I wonder, how could I do that? How could that happen? But I said, if this is true, show me the way. And it was like, felt really, really deep, and I was quite blown away from this experience. And there were like, in this year, like different things happening where I was blown away, really blown away. I was like, wow, there's so much more out there, so much more than I'm aware about. I had another meditation, like a group meditation, where certain people were doing certain things with energy. I don't know what really happened there, but it was like I started to sing a song in a language I didn't know, and I never was singing. I was very blocked, very, very blocked. And there were certain things happening where I knew like, and after that, a few days later, I met a woman, and she, after a longer talk, she was like, you are this jungle girl living there. I was like, yeah, but probably not so long anymore. I have to go back to Berlin. My money gets less and less, and I'm sad about that. And then she said, I have a farm in California. Would you like to come there? And I was like, what? It was a few days after this event where I said, okay, if this is true that I go to Peru, show me the way. I need money. If I get money, I'm going there. I do that. So a few days later, this woman appeared. So I did that. I went to California. I worked 3 months hardcore on a farm, very nice place in the mountains. And two women I met in this time, they told me about the Temple of the Way of Light. I was like, looking it up. And then I wrote a letter there, hey, I would like to come as a volunteer. And they said, yes, come. So I took the money from this work on the farm, and directly after I made my first trip to Peru. And this was in the beginning of 2015. And since then, I'm almost only here. I only went back from Peru back to California in the beginning to make some money, and going back to Peru. And I think a few times I went to Germany, but really short. So I was here like mainly 8 months, 8 months the year. And then I made my residency, and I met the family where I'm dieting with. And so this was my way to Peru.
And were you interested in what might be described as shamanism, or was that you just knew there was some like indigenous wisdom that you felt drawn to? Because kind of as I take shamanism, it really is. I was talking about this in the last podcast I did with my friend Will. That really all of these esoteric traditions or shamanism were discoveries into the nature of being, into the nature of the human, the mind, what it means to be a human being. So did you think about that in a way, or it was just you knew something in the Amazon, this plant was calling you, and that was the path?
Looking back, I think there was like a deeper knowing, but not really conscious in the head. I knew, but more here in that area, I need to drink this plant medicine, and it will unreveal something. There was this deeper knowing. I didn't do any research. I never was a person who was taking a lot of information in through books. Now also I know more about it, that I'm more like experimental through experiencing learning. And then sometimes I get curious and then I read about it to get confirmation to my experience. I'm more that direction. I go more through that. And I was very curious what are Shipibos, but I didn't read any books or watched any movies before. Nothing. I read a little bit about ayahuasca. I knew it's 2 plants, but that's it, you know. It was like this deep feeling. I go there and I drink medicine. And some people were surprised. You committed for 3 months and you never drank that before. And I was like, yeah. And it felt just really right. I think there was this, as I mentioned before, since I'm 14 years old, there was this deep curiosity. What is that? What I see? What are these energies and these colors and this web? What I could see, like this network, what connects every living essence. I could see that when I was a teenager, and I was so curious that I think a part inside of me was looking for people, for wisdom keepers, like for teachers, for something what can explain me my experiences. So I think there was this deeper looking for shamanism, but not consciously.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that's something that everyone can experience? There's just reasons we're cut off from that? Or do you think certain people just, for whatever reason, have an innate ability to sense things like that more? Because I would imagine some people listening get that, and then some people, that's just a completely foreign concept to them. Or it's maybe it's some of both. There's conditions that we're raised in that kind of cut us off from that, but maybe certain people have an innate ability for that. Do you have any sense, especially having been doing this work for a while now?
I mean, I believe that every human is able to experience that, but to the same time, I see there are so many conditions which block this completely openness of perception to go there and to see that. And I also believe we are all on a different path, and we are attracting different things, we are learning different things. And I think for some people, they are just more open to that, and some people are not. And but also, as we experienced, I know we both also experienced that many times together when we work together in the center, that people are very rational and not believing in any of that. And through the plants, woof, things opening up, and the whole reality changes. What is a part of a huge integration? If you are so certain that how you see things, that's reality, and then you get introduced that behind that there are so many subtle other layers where it gets broken down to the smallest particles, which opens completely different perspectives. So I believe every human naturally in its essence is open for that, but I believe through our ancestors, through where we come from, where we went through all these different conditions, beliefs, patterns. For many people, it's not real and not accessible. But I don't know. I mean, plants are big openers for people who are not believing at all in that. But also not everyone wants to do the plants, and that's totally fine. Yeah. Not everyone wants to go there because of different reasons, and that's completely fine and completely okay. I mean, it's sometimes interesting for me if I would imagine every human, or let's say 80% of the humans in the world would have this opening to see, wow, what would change, how would our systems changing? Because obviously our thinking changes, our actions changing, how we touch life, how we make decisions, everything changes when this is opening. But yeah.
What's one of the fascinating things I often think about is, you look at the times we're living in with the coronavirus, and I think everyone, to some degree, has a sense of something like washing your hands is very important, because there's bacteria and microorganisms and potentially viruses that can live on our skin, and by washing that, we potentially kill those or remove those from us. But 150 years ago, that was a foreign concept. I mean, there was a famous story, I forget who he was, I think he was a British medical doctor, and they noticed that a lot of infants, when they were being born, were dying, and they weren't sure why. And this one doctor came along and he said, look, I think we as doctors need to wash our hands before we aid in the birth. And he was so ridiculed. You know, the medical doctors were saying, there's these invisible things that you can't see with the human eye, like, are you crazy? Like, and he was so mocked that eventually, I believe he committed suicide because he was outcast. And then it was, a few years or a decade later that the microscope, I believe, was invented, and they looked with the human eye through this device, and they saw that what he was saying was real. And it was a complete, I think when someone said, I'm not sure if it was, I can't remember, but someone said, and I found this to be really true, that all truth passes through 3 stages. First, it's ridiculed or it's laughed at. Second, it's violently opposed. And third, it's accepted as if it was always truth. And, now we look at that and we just accept that that's true. There's all these little things, invisible things that we can't see that can do, this tremendous amount of harm or good. And we don't even think that not that long ago, that was not real. That was not reality. And so I think in that way, like you're saying, it's, these shifts of reality are profound.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really profound. When what we think is real are our beliefs, and then all of a sudden that's shifted, that's a big deal.
It's a big deal. And I really like, the saying, I'm not sure from who I heard it. I think it was Dr. Daniel Siegel. And he said, a real scientist is embracing the unknown because he knows. There are things they are in the mystery. So a real scientist is embracing the unknown, is embracing the mystery.
And that's such a rare quality.
Yeah.
I mean, for anyone.
Yeah. Yeah.
To really embrace that, to embrace the unknown, to say, I don't know.
Yeah.
And it's, And I think, unfortunately, I mean, I think science is an amazing thing. I think it's the innate function of a human being, which is observation, looking at something, making some sort of hypothesis based on that, and then seeing if that's true. I mean, that's how all human beings work.
Yeah.
I think, unfortunately, in a lot of science, there's a lot of dogma. And I think even in this coronavirus time, we see that, which is like follow the science, as if something is settled and all scientists agree on the same thing. I mean, it's completely against what it means to be a scientist, which is to constantly question, to constantly probe, to see, is this true, is this not true, what is another possibility?
And to which point we know, and when it continues, and there's a continuum which we don't know, but acknowledging the continuum. And I really like the word transrational. I read a book at some point from a German woman, and she talks about thinking, a lot about thinking. I don't remember her name, but she said, and I really resonate with it, our thoughts come from a rational point, what is amazing. And we have this plate. In German, we have this saying, when you have a plate, this year it's all rational, but then it continues after the corner of the plate, and that's the transrational. And transrational doesn't mean we don't acknowledge the rational. We acknowledge fully the rational, but we also know there's a transmission into more. and that's and it includes the rational, but then it's growing further and further, and I really like that word. And I think, I don't know how it is for you or for others, but in my I had times where I was demonizing my rational thinking and lineal thinking, because I had so many experiences in ceremony, but also outside in life, where I could notice how my rational thinking, there was all this inheritage, being a German, and all this rational lineal thinking. There were so many ways where I was blocking myself to be fully me, and still, I can observe it. But I had a time where I was fighting it because I could see all the blockages, and it was a part of my process just to allow myself to go to the other side and experiencing things outside of lineal thinking and rational thinking, and allowing to be in a non-linear experiencing and seeing that there's truth, until I could get friend again with my rational thinking and acknowledging it and valuing it. And I think we go sometimes through these different experiences where we live different extremes, Mm-hmm. And I remember how friends or my dad, who are very rational, how it was difficult for me to connect to them when I was in the time I was against rational thinking, because it was just my process to dissolve more this pattern and to get to know it more, to allow other energies and other experience come in, until I could, get friend with all of that and seeing it all is important, Mm-hmm. And science is so important, but with the transrational bridge, I think that's the linkage to the unknown and the acceptance and this. And we know, the universe is unlimited. So why do we need to make it? Why do we need the limitation? Why do we need to put it in a rational plate or in a rational structure? Why? Yeah, and there are many answers. So it's fear. We want to control. We want to know why. So, and I think that's a huge field to explore.
Mm-hmm. And also, like the example I gave,
Mm-hmm.
it was irrational and only until it became rational.
Exactly. It was a really good example. I really like it.
Mm.
And I think the same was with certain mathematic and physics scientists in the past who got demonized and who got pushed out of society, until, at some point they realized, wow, that's actually true,
That seems to be I think one could say, like the archetypical experience of any great thinker, is they're always in the beginning laughed at or demonized.
Yeah.
Until eventually the proof is just overwhelming and it
Yeah.
becomes accepted as truth.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So what was, when you came to the temple for 3 months as a work exchange, what was that like for you?
Oof.
Because I would imagine you were drinking,
Yes.
but you were also doing some sort. What was your work exchange?
It was like I was the kitchen link. I was
Okay.
helping in the kitchen, and I was helping in the garden with permaculture, and there was still a library where I also was helping. So it was like doing different things, yeah, and drinking the medicine and being surrounded with all the people who already worked for many years with the plants, which was also very inspiring. A lot of learning and seeing like the groups coming through, how they go through the experience. So it was very transformative, and but my ceremonies were very difficult.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was very, 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 very difficult, and not like some people say like they have this huge, seeing all these things and having this huge breakthroughs. I didn't have that. I had like really heavy stuff, and I was tired, and my body was icky, like, can I say that? And I went a lot to the toilet, but I didn't had this wow openings, but I knew it's a cleansing. I knew it's a restructuring. I knew these are tests, and I knew when I continue doing that, something new inside of me, it's what I need to do.
Mm-hmm. And what was it like? Because I'm sure you saw, a lot of people coming through. Every workshop was like 23 people, something like that. So in 3 months, you must have seen a lot of people come through. What did you gain from that? Were there things you began to notice in people, in why they came down, and how the medicine was working, and how they emerged? Were there kind of like common archetypes you saw, or did you get a deeper sense? I mean, obviously from your own experience, but then observing so many people, did you begin to kind of feel like you were beginning to understand in a way how ayahuasca was working? Obviously, if we ever think we know too much, that's usually a not very good sign.
And understanding is also like I understand something and then I understand more and then it's shifting, But I think like what I found very impressive, as I remember right, like my first 3 months in 2015 there, was that I had this huge like, wow. I mean, I worked in psychiatric hospitals. I worked in this, in all these therapeutic institutions in Germany. And it was this, wow, this here is like a spiritual hospital, This is where people can heal with coming in through a different door, through a different angle and different perspective, and can experience wholeness. And it's guided by a higher wisdom, which I don't know where it comes from. But I think this confirmation where I was looking for all the time, I was met there. Like sitting in ceremony the first time in my life and seeing the Shipibo Maestros in the middle, singing the Icaros, it was like, wow, I mean, what are they doing? Like all these questions. But then also like, there was honestly this part inside of me, I didn't want to acknowledge it and see it because I felt a little bit embarrassed and confused about it, but it was, I want to learn what they do. And I realized, like when I was a teenager and starting experimenting with all these different sacred plants and having these different experiences, I could connect and saying, wow, I want to learn what they are doing. There are the answers. I will find a lot of answers and new questions when I want to experience that. And it was this, I was always looking for these wisdom keepers and this confirmation, this deep confirmation that I was right, that there is so much more and that this interest in me gets met. This was like huge for me. And, also seeing like the Shipibo Maestros, like giving also plans, like other plans for healing, like where they address physically issues, but they are then connected, to the mental structures and the emotional structures, and it gets all this one movement of energy and this connection, and it's not separated. Oh, you get this pill because you think that way, or you get that pill because your emotions are like that, or you get that pill because your body has that or that symptom. There are plants who are connecting all that. And through then having the own experience through ayahuasca, where the perceptions and consciousness and connection to consciousness and to self is opening new layers and doors, how there's also this self-healing and self-realizations happening, while you also have the shamans or the doctors as the Shipibos who are working with you. So it's like a more empowerment, healing in the way I don't depend on the pills you give me. I do my own work in connection with the plants, in connection with the shaman who knows how to work with energies, in connection to so much more out there, which is guiding my experience as well. So this was, the first introduction to all of that, which was huge, and where I had in 2015, the wish, I want to work here. And I was speaking with already after this 3 months, I was going to the director, to the manager, to Deborah, who is now also such a dear sister. And I was like, I want to work here. But obviously I didn't have enough experience, I just had my first 3 months. And she said, if you're really interested, the next step, or I asked her, what are my next steps, to work as a facilitator and to be in that field. And she said, the traditional ways, you start to do diets, Masterplant Diets, to learn more about all that. And this was like, yes, okay.
And so that was the next step.
Yeah.
And how did you go about finding, because I think that's a lot of a question people often have is like, how do you do that? Like, did someone just kind of magically appear, or you were recommended someone, or you met different people and someone resonated?
Yeah. So it was first like I asked people who worked there, give me recommendations. But somehow all these recommendations, for some reason, they didn't resonate, or I went there and somehow it didn't feel right, or I felt like, oh no, I need to go there. So somehow it was not connecting. I really wanted, but there were different things happening then. And when I was in the temple, there was one person. This person mentioned a Shipibo word for a certain tree. And I feel like it's a very huge tree. It's a huge tree in the jungle, which grows through the techo, through the roof of the other jungle trees, and it carries a lot of light. But this person mentioned this name of this tree in Shipibo, and it was like vibrating, and I was like, I didn't know anything about Masterplant Diets, besides that's a kind of training and learning, nothing else I knew. And I was like, what is this name? And he said it again. And I was like, wow. And then I mentioned that to another person who also had a lot of experience. I said, what is about this tree? And this person said to me, you should not start with this tree. That's a very powerful tree. If you start to do a diet, try other smaller plants. And I was like, okay. And then I came here to the Sacred Valley. And again, I met a person who was talking about exactly the same tree. And I was like, wow, I hear again this word. And it was like, and how he talked about it, it was like, wow, I want to do that. And then I asked, who are your maestros? And he named the maestros, and he said, this is like this lineage works especially with this tree, and it's a very famous lineage if you want to work with this tree. And I was like, wow. And it was like everything was opening. But then I had this voice from this other person, you should not start with this big tree, start with smaller plants. And somehow I was really respecting the person who said that to me. And I was somehow listening to that. And and then I did my first diet here in the Sacred Valley. What was nice, but it was not with the Shipibos. It was with 2 other trees. It was really, really deep. It was good. It was just a short diet from 7 days, but it gave me a lot in that time. But I didn't forget this other tree, and I wanted to do that. So a little later, I met another person talking again about this tree, learning with the same maestros. And I was like, hey, can I have the contact? How can I connect? And I got a name from a guy from the Netherlands who is studying with them for a long time and organizing dietas. And I was connecting to him, and I said, I want to do that. And he said, yeah, sure. And I said, yeah, but I don't have so much experience, And he said, that's fine. And and so I connected to them. And it was interesting because things in Germany were happening. And I went to California working, and I wanted to come to the jungle, training with this tree and this lineage. And then something happened in Germany, and I had to go to Berlin. I was devastated. I was so sad. I was like, I felt I would work with this tree, and now I have to be 2-3 months here in Germany, and then I can go to Peru. But it was so sad for me that I have to wait a couple of months to take care about things in Berlin. And then I contacted this guy from the Netherlands. I said, hey, I'm so sorry. I know I promised I will come, and I'm serious. I want, but I have to be in Berlin. And he said, hey, you know what? I bring the first time the maestra to the Netherlands this summer. And I was like, oh, the tree and the maestra comes to me. So I went like for 2 times for 10 days. These were my first diets with this lineage to the Netherlands. Just 2 times for 10 days from Berlin to the Netherlands. I did that there, and then later I went then for my first 4 months diet with them to the jungle. Yeah. So this was the start, how I found them. And I have to say, like the first 10 days with this maestra, She comes from a very famous and well-known lineage in the Ucayali region, Shipibo lineage, who works especially with this tree. It's also called like Palo Volador, or also Tree of Light. If someone wants to know more, I'm happy to share, particularly if someone really feels the call. It was after these 10 days I knew, okay, I want to learn with you my whole life. It was like very, very strong, very, very strong. And it went so, so deep. And also afterwards, like how my life shifted. Very challenging, not easy, very strong. And there were like, and I didn't go always forward. There were also like relapses back. But so, so strong, I knew, okay, if I want to learn that, and I got supported from life the whole time, that I could make money, that life was guiding me. And when doubt came in, what I'm doing in the jungle with these trees, and parents, friends, they were doubting. Of course, I also had this doubt. But when this doubt came up and I had other thoughts and other ideas, maybe that's not the right thing. Always life and universe was pushing me back. So I ended up again in the jungle, again in diets. And I continued until the doubt was gone and it got more and more clear. That's it, what I want to learn.
Mm. And how would you describe that dieting process? Because I think that's something a lot of people are interested in, but it can also seem very foreign to people.
There's you interviewed my friend Brian as well. I'm not sure if he said the same, because he learns with the same lineage. But there's this, I like just to give this picture. There's a tree, and this tree carries like a own world, carries own consciousness, own information, wisdom. And if you want to connect to this wisdom, they said you have to sit in front of the tree, emptying yourself, like fasting, not eating, maybe even not drinking, and letting go of everything around you, and sit and meditate in front of this tree in stillness. And just sit there and see what happens. And if you really sit there and you make yourself empty, and you're totally there with this tree, sitting in front of this tree for weeks, months, years, the tree will connect to you, and you will connect to the wisdom of the tree, and the tree will guide you. And I think dieting is like really commitment. My maestros, they give you ayahuasca every second night, usually. Also if you come for a diet for learning, and of course, we always heal our emotionally, mentally stuff. Also if it's a diet where you don't have like physically intense things going on, you drink every second night the ayahuasca to open, and doing your own work, to show up, and to see how committed you are. And then during the days you are fasting. There are different ways how you decide to fast. And every second night you are there in ceremony, you show up. And it's a lot about cleansing, cleaning, releasing. There's different moments, different stages in the diet. You get learning, input. I think you give in with your commitment. You give in with your showing up. You give in with experiencing what you experience. And the more you give in, the more comes back. And you give in and it comes back. And it's, for me, a kind of reciprocity between the consciousness and the world of this tree, and between you. And it's very individual. Individual in the way how you receive your teachings, of course, and what you give in. But also it's interesting, like I know now people who also dieted for the last years, like very intensely. And when sometimes we talk or we share our perspectives or our path, there are similarities. And and this is also interesting, But still, it's also, of course, individual path. But bedded, of course, as I see it as that we have an individual consciousness, because I'm driving my car, not someone else. But also we are bedded in a much bigger, and we are all the time in exchange and interaction. But I see also I have individuality in the whole network where I'm bedded in. And in the learning in a diet, I mean, I guess it's I have two other trees I'm dieting, but I have one tree mainly which is always there, and which I since 2016. I mean, it's I did every it's much more than a year where I was with this certain tree. I feel like it's it's during your diet you go in a process, you get teachings, you see things, you have realizations, but then also outside of diet, how do you integrate it, and how you learn. Because for me, the main commitment with this strong plants, guided from strong shamans from the ancestral line, where there's a lot of knowing and memory included in the work. Like the commitment, the biggest commitment for me means like when I learn or see or experience something, I can't forget it. I can't say, oh, I didn't learn that. I step out of it, it's too much. It's too much responsibility, it's too much. You can't go out of it. And what I think we all do, or I speak about myself maybe better, I know it's happening to me that sometimes it's just too much to include what I saw or realized, or there are old patterns coming up, and I'm not living what I learned. I get it reflected very fast. Very fast. So the commitment for me is everything what you learn and realize and what flows through you have to put in life, through your thinking, through your feeling, through your actions. You have to use that. If you ignore that and then it comes back. It reflects really fast back. So you can't go out anymore. When you are in that, there's no way. That would get really painful. That would get. And this is, I think, when people talk about crossing a diet. That's for me what I include in the word crossing a diet. When you are not using what you learn and what this tree and consciousness gives you. If you ignore, if you go into your shadows, if you try to find the more easy way, then things are reflecting back in different ways, shake you through, so that and realize, and then you can go back and bring it in alignment again, or not. And if not, I think this is when people really can experience disharmony.
It was interesting when you first described the experience with the tree. It was very archetypical of the Buddha's story, actually. Sitting under this tree, emptying, going through every layer of the mind. And can you give an example? It doesn't necessarily have to be from your own experience, but like what that would look like when someone learns something from the diet and then they see it's reflected back at them. Like they have some teaching, but then from what I understand you're saying, if you're not embodying that, if you're not putting that as a principle, it can be reflected back to you.
Yeah.
Can you think of an example of that?
Yeah. I mean, the most closest is our personal experiences, and as my process is to be authentic and also showing my shadows and showing my vulnerability, I take this personal one and not trying to find anything else. One was for me, like, it was after my first 2 10-day diet, so it was all very, very, very fresh in 2016, and I was in Berlin, where was still my old environment with all this old behavior reminders and old patterns showing up everywhere. Like one thing for me, it was really clear. I don't want to take any chemical substances, drugs, MDMA, amphetamines, ketamine, things which were part in my life before for 15 years almost to go to parties and do that. I knew, I could see how sticky the energy is in my thoughts, in between of my thoughts, in between how there are pockets in my whole system where it's like sticky because I used it to suppress unconsciously things in my life. I could see that I tried to control my emotions with certain substances. Oh, I want to feel happy, I want to feel good, I want to feel confident, or I just want to chill and I smoke some weed. I used drugs since I was 14, 15 to control my emotions and to control myself. And there were a lot of pain, what I didn't want to feel. It was not consciously, but I could see it through my first diets. So I knew I want to be purely me, and I want to learn being purely me. And I stick to that for 2 years or something like that. But then 2016, when I came back out of my first diets, I was in Berlin, all the clubs and all my friends who still are in the same patterns. I was like, I can do that, just a little, And I felt so afterwards, my body was hurting and painful. My mind got really clouded, and I could sense like how I interrupted like the flow from the plant energy and me. Like for me, it's like, like when you diet, I see it that way. It's my subjective seeing. Other people probably see it differently. But I see it like when you diet, you get this network, like this really fine network of energy which is flowing through you and which is connected to the trees and to universe and to other wisdom, and you are embedded in that flow, and when you are in alignment and when you're connected and aligned with what you learn, you're the whole time in this interaction which is guiding you, which supports you in your releasing and in your healing and in your input and output. And I could see after this weekend that I felt before it was all this flow and connectiveness, and then there was this glue, like not being really in the flow, and also I could sense it on different layers. Luckily I went to Peru and I was dieting again, and then it was for me, I got cleaned out and I could learn even more. I mean, I learned a lot through that, and I don't regret it, because for me it was really important, this relapse in this old pattern in 2016, to really realize even on a deeper layer what it means. Same, also like a personal example, but maybe people can relate to it. I had also in my first diets in 2016 like a huge teaching. It's personal, but it's okay. About what does it mean to have sex with someone and exchanging energy, and with who do you exchange energy. And the tree was showing me, or I saw, I mean, I say sometimes the tree was showing me, but it's through the tree and through the ayahuasca I experienced like a really clear image how through dieting I get this green light energy inside of myself. And dieting also means honoring your energy, taking care about yourself, looking after yourself, being healthy, being well and taking care. That's also a commitment. When this Maestros and the lineage from them and the ancestors, where they got all this knowledge through all these years, I don't know, centuries, I don't know, but passed on, what an honor it is to receive that. And your part, my part, was shown to me. I have to honor that and taking care about it and not waste it. And if I have sex with someone who is still, and I was in Berlin, that's why it was about a particular person who is still in this life, like drinking, partying, and not taking care about his energy. If I exchange with someone who has this different energy, I'm not honoring because I give it out and I get this gray, I saw it like gray and sticky back. So I'm not honoring my energy. So I have to be more conscious and aware about my energy and to take care about that. And I also had a relapse in that in the beginning in 2016. And also afterwards, I experienced similar things like I explained before. So, and then I realized like even more like how much commitment it is, I mean, that was just my beginning experiences. But also now later on, when I started to do retreats, when I started to do Masterplant Diets with my Maestros, where it's like really, really clear how to organize something, how to be in alignment, how to take care about others as well, and not me first, what does it mean to be in service, and really letting the energy of the tree and the knowledge flowing through me and being there as a channel and as a bridge, and also there I had sometimes moments where maybe an ego thing played out, or I didn't want to do something because money-wise it didn't make sense, and I had just the thought, it doesn't make sense money-wise. Why should I do that now? Traveling there, doing all that for this 2 or 3 people. And then I got really fast, shown, no. You do that because you are receiving so much and you're grateful for what you receive. And it's my integrity to give it back much as possible that other people can learn as well and grow and heal as well. So let go of all other thoughts, be in this flow of service, to be in reciprocity with the plant work and the medicine world, the Rauhnötte. So you are in reciprocity with this world. So it means that your service is to create space and hold space where your maestros can work and other people can come for healing. So this was recently happening for me, but I notice it now. I would say I notice it quite quick. I just have a thought. Maybe I have the thought a little longer. I'm not doing that. No, I want to stay home. I want to have my cacao and I want to have my good food and I want to be at home. I don't want to go to the jungle and maybe a lockdown happens and then I can't come back home. No. But then the energy is giving me pressure, or I feel not good, and then I check in. What's happening? Okay. And then I make the decision. I book the flights. I say, okay, I'm doing that. And then again, I feel supported from life and energy and that. Mm-hmm. So these are different. Did this answer of your question?
Yeah, that seems like a really good point too, because I think a lot of people, it could be correct, but I think it could not, which is this idea that, the deeper one goes into this work, that the mind is just pure, clean, and these what you may say negative thoughts don't arise. And I think that's really nice how you put it. It's not that they don't arise, it's just there's a recognition of it faster. It's one can see it for what it is, and then it loses its power and it goes aside, and a clearness or a higher truth or a clarity arises in place of that thought.
Yeah.
And I think that's an important point, because I think a lot of people, as you were mentioning, this process of integration, if they relapse or these thoughts come up, it's almost seen as a failure. But I think more important is then, how do we react to those? And are we sitting in that thought for 5 minutes, for 5 days, for 5, some people 5 years, 5 decades, some people sit in a thought. Or does the thought arise and for a shorter amount of time, it has a hold, and then it's something else arises and replaces it.
Yeah. You're so good with putting things in words and explaining them.
So you mentioned also something really interesting. You were saying when you were 14, when you were young, you're out in the woods and you were working, I'm guessing maybe with mushrooms, and you were having these really profound experiences where you were seeing energy and connection. But at the same time, you felt like you needed something else, like a guidance, maybe. So what do you think is the difference between working with something on your own and having a guide? Or you use the word maestro. Because I think for a lot of people, that's always this really interesting dilemma. Because on the one hand, some people would say, well, the plant or the mushroom in that instance is the teacher. It contains everything. So why do I need to find someone else? And then other people would say, no, you can never do that. You have to find the teacher, because how do you learn anything? You need a human potentially who's been through that process to help you guide you through that process. Do you think one is true and one is not, or is there some sort of balance in there, or what is the benefit of having a maestro or a guide?
Yeah, I'm glad you bring that up. It's so important. So I think there's not one truth, in general. But for that topic, I mean, I know there are people who use plants by themselves and they have their breakthroughs and their learning and their healing, but also I think there's a huge danger and a huge risk when you use plants by yourself, because maybe you experience something where you think you have a breakthrough or learning, but to the same time it causes on another layer a lot of blockages and a lot of interruption. Maybe you are aware about after, maybe you're not aware about after. And I mean, it's so unlimited energetically what can happen. So much more can happen that I'm aware about, even now after doing all this long dietas. But I know there can things energetically happen which maybe open you in a way that you're more accessible for other low vibrations, or maybe things can happen where you get blocked in your process because energy is not completely flowing through, which can cause disharmony, blockages, sickness, illnesses, attraction to certain other blockages or low stuff. So it's for me it's very, very risky to do like strong plants without having a training around energies and what can happen and how you move energy, how you focus on energy, how it flows, and how you protect afterwards again your field. I mean, I don't see myself there right now. I mean, my maestros supporting me now since a while, since 2 years. I think they want that I drink by myself, just for me to learn. But I'm very careful with that because there's so much I still don't know, and I don't know if I ever will know, you know. So I know that people have that, hey, it's just the plant and me, and I can see that. I can understand where this comes from. But also now, with what I saw and what I'm learning, I can see it's very, very tricky and it can be very dangerous. And maybe you're not aware after. Maybe you have an accident, or maybe you meet weird people, or maybe you attract weird things. Maybe you're not in flow of life, and maybe it's connected because energetically something is not in alignment and it's not in the best shape. And maybe if you have someone who really knows about energy, like I call them Shipibo Maestros or healers, just because I learn with Shipibos, but there are others, you know, who learn different things. Maybe if you would work with a master who has the connection to the plant and to the energies and know how to work with you and how to bring you in a good shape and structure, maybe life would be very different after. But there are things in the unknown, and I that's just how I experience it and how I see it.
So you would describe the maestro as someone who's, when someone takes a plant, they're able to somehow like guide or to align, to bring things into harmony, whereas if they weren't there, things could potentially be disordered?
Yeah. Yes. I think when you really have like someone who knows, someone who, you know, for many, many, many years learned to connect to the energy, consciousness, world, however you want to call it, from this plant, has a connection to the plant and is perceiving or seeing, when you drank the plant and you have the plant inside of you, and the plant unfolds, the energy unfolds in your field, the person who knows how to connect to this world and consciousness from this energy knows how to connect this energy to you in the most best healing way, to connect you to light, you know, in the way where I learn to make your field, to harmonize your field in connection even, you know, to stars, to the sun, to the earth, to the moon. So I call it like that. Maybe for others this is not the way, but your place in universe, like your individual system, gets connected and harmonized with universe where you are bedded in. And if there are blockages, or if there are patterns which are, they work on them, how they see it on an energetically level. How you feel it and sense it can be different when they do the work. Maybe mentally things come up, physically, emotionally. Maybe you don't sense anything, but they work what they see energetically, what unfolds and shows up for you on your different layers. Traumata, limitations, separation, things which are unpaired or dispaired. They connect them, they linkage them, so that the result is that the energy and the colors, the energy is what they see, that they flow in a nice pattern. So they work on this energetically channels and fields. And this has an effect in you, how you are connected to your being and how you are bedded in the whole. And this is for me high technology energetically work, where I'm again and again blown away, because it's incredible and it's much more than we rational can see, and it's so unlimited, and there's so much emerging in that which you can't break down in its own parts, because it's that's how I experience it. And this is for me the work from a good master or someone who knows, in connection with the plant you have in. And and that's for me just so amazing that we still have these people who can do that. If we would not have them anymore, then it would be different. But as long as we have them, it's amazing to take advantage or to connect to these people, to perceive that.
Yeah.
If we have the possibility. I also know some people don't have the possibility. They sit somewhere in a city or somewhere, they can't travel. They are not in the situation, but they have maybe access to a plant. So I mean, I know I'm so grateful that I got guided here to Peru and that I can learn with this lineage of healers, with this family, and that I got so supported from life that I can diet every year for many, many months, or I did that at least in the last years. So that's a huge gift. And I know we are all in different situations, so I believe we have to check in and reflect individually.
You were mentioning in the beginning this idea of, you were really drawn to people experiencing what in the West we may call psychosis or mental illness, but that you felt it was potentially something different or something missing. Mm-hmm. Do you think plant medicines in that way can aid that person, that it can provide them potentially that missing link of what they're looking for? Because I think I would probably say every single human being alive is mentally ill, myself included. It's all a spectrum. How, to what degree do we hold on? To what degree do we suffer? To what degree do we believe everything in our mind is true? And to some degree, to that extent, we're suffering, or our mind isn't completely in harmony, which illness or disease just means being out of ease, being out of balance, out of harmony. So obviously there can be a huge spectrum. And so I think everyone coming down to some degree working with these plants is suffering from some form of mental illness. It's the human illness, as you were saying. It differs individually, but there's also the human illness. So obviously, from all the work you've done, you've seen that has a tremendous impact, a tremendous benefit. But what about those people who are maybe, we could say, more on the further end of the spectrum, where in the West we would clearly say that person has a mental illness, that person has bipolar, that person has a psychosis. Do you think that actually these plants have the potential to heal them, or is there also a danger in that?
Both. No, there's for sure a danger, and there's a possibility to heal. Both. I mean, it's such an interesting field, and it's such a we don't know what the outcome is, and I think with people who have psychosis experiences, and especially when they were for a longer time, not just a short episode, like a longer period, it's very, very tricky with ayahuasca, right? I think there are many, many other plants and which are not psychoactive, which can prepare and help, but I don't know much enough around that, I have to say. I'm not on the state. I think it's also very individual, what did trigger the psychosis. So I think it's very important for someone who knows that the person comes in a ceremony, like as in the traditional way, the healer, the shaman drinks the ayahuasca, the patient or the client not, but to give for the one who knows the chance to see what's happening energetically. Where are the entanglements? Where are the blockages? I think you need first to see the energetically pattern, and then to see how can you release and how can you clean and how can you restructure, destructure the energetically patterns, that it flows in harmony, with everything around what is. How can you bring in alignment the energy? Because it starts on the smallest part of energy, what you need to see, how to from within, how to heal. So I think there is, from my perspective, not one answer. It needs to be seen first. What's there?
Mm-hmm. You mentioned this idea that a lot of the younger people you saw, you felt like they were missing something in the spiritual dimension. What do you have a sense of what that is, or how that can be alleviated?
Yeah, I believe every part. I'm very interested since 1.5 years, more or less. I'm learning with different Western teachers as well. I'm in the end of the 1-year program with Dr. Gabor Mate, and I'm very interested in the internal family system. I'm not doing a course, I only did short course, but no certification courses with Dr. Richard Schwartz, but he works with parts. I found this very interesting, and also I like to combine all that, like what I learn in the Shipibo tradition, but also what I learn with Dr. Gabor Mate, what I so far learned, but I want to go deeper with Dr. Richard Schwartz from IFS, and also from Dr. Dan Siegel. I'm right now doing a course. It's interpersonal neurobiology, and I like to connect all the dots. And I'm in an integration process how to connect all that, but I found it quite interesting. But to come back to the question, for me, it's really interesting to see, and what is absolutely in alignment, what I learn in the Shipibo tradition with the plants, that every part in you wants to be seen and wants to be acknowledged. And I mean with parts like all kind of emotions, defense mechanisms, traumas, maybe something happened and it's in exile, maybe it's separated, and then there are other parts which are protecting this part of pain or haven't been seen or trauma, And I think very important it is to, we could say, unblend these different parts, or we could say to learn to distinguish these different parts in us. And it needs often time, because there are many defense mechanisms which we build up, or many protections. But when we get, and this is the same what I can see in ceremony. So for me also it was like, first I could see these things in ceremony, experimental, And then I got curious and I started to learn with these different Western approaches. Also, I want to mention the diamond approach, which is for me like also like opening a lot. And then I can connect it, you know. And I think like a person where it's like young people who experience maybe the missing linkage to spirituality, and that's why they get sick. I think it would really be important to really give them the chance to see them and that they can feel felt and really, really going in attunement with them and building up trust and resonance so that they feel safe. And when you feel safe, you know, you can go deep with someone and really looking at different parts. Who wants to be seen? Where's pain? Where's vulnerability? You know, and who are you? Who are you really? You know, what is your true essence? What is your self energy? And where is it blocked? You know, where is it blocked? And where are beliefs? You know, and where are conditions? And who are you really? Who are you really? And really showing this interest, and then exploring from there. And I think as children or teenagers, we have so many questions, great questions. Where I'm coming from? Where do I go? You know, what is life? And I think these are natural questions, you know, and what I also heard like someone saying, for example, awakening is also like an instinct that you have. The awakening is like this cheesy word, but I don't know another word, like real, you know, when you want to realize more, you know, you want to realize more and you have like openings, aha moments. This I call like, for me, these are little, you know, like awakenings. And that this is also an instinct at some point when you realize surviving doesn't mean just sleeping, eating, having sex. That surviving goes like more out of this physical. And that's why some people have this impulse or this instinct, I want to learn more, I want to realize more, because it's this inner knowing that survival goes much more further than our physically survival. So I think that many of us, depending who we are and at which stage we are, that we as children and teenagers, we already have that in us. This instinct, it's more about eating, sleeping, sex, like this typical recognized survival instincts. There's more. So I want to explore where I'm coming from, where do I go, what is out there. And when this gets not responded, because maybe the environment is blocked in that way, don't ask these questions, you know. You are this body, you come out of your mom and then you die and da-da-da, you know? Like when this is not getting in resonance, I think it can create gaps of confusion and limitation, and energy can't flow fully because this part is not seen in you. And that's why I think it's so important to unreveal with young people as well, or whoever, old people, to unreveal, to really see what is there, to distinguish, to unblend, to make space for, however we call it, true essence, self-energy. And I think if we psychology, very important, you know, to understand our patterns, why we experience that or that we get a sense for compassion, also why we got there, that we get a sense of responsibility and not blaming, but seeing, hey, I'm like that, and not blaming others, not blaming self, but really realizing which puzzle pieces make us to who we are, what is like learned personality, and making that transparent and making space for self-energy, for true essence. And yeah, and I think there's a lot of potential.
Mm-hmm. You use this word trauma, and that's a word that I think it's used a lot now. And it seems like a lot of people talk about that in terms of plant medicine, that's, you know, plant medicine is alleviating trauma or getting to the root of the trauma. Yeah. Do you think that's what plant medicine is doing, or that's just one of the things that it's doing, or that's one of the byproducts of plant medicine? And then also, to what degree do you think it's beneficial to go into the trauma, to see it, to acknowledge it? And then is there also a point where one needs to let it go, to release it? And what is that maybe line for you?
So for me, trauma is something what is frozen. For me, that's something what is limiting me in my experience. Especially when I'm not aware about it. It can control my life. If there's something what happened in the past and I'm acting out of this past experience again and again without noticing, the past is influencing my present and my future. And for me, plant medicine, when we are open to it, it can show us many things where we are not aware about, which are in our unconsciousness, and it can help us going through protection or going through, walls we build up not to feel that pain, not to see that. But then it's guiding us and leading us out of our past and out of our unconsciousness. So for me, one of the biggest values, I think, with plant medicine is that it can open the curtain so we get more conscious and we bring light and unconsciousness, so we get more aware, what also means we can take more responsibility, because when we are more aware where we are acting and responding out of, we can take responsibility. Otherwise, we are not conscious. We don't have this space where we choose, and it gives us choice. The more we know about ourselves, the more choice we can have, and the more space for choice we can create to guide us through our life. So the more empowerment and the more inner leadership we can address and develop. Trauma, for me, as said, is limitation, and if we get aware, I think if we learn to feel things and to, often I think trauma, it's when something gets frozen, it's a protective mechanism, because at some point in your life it was like, I can't feel that pain, I would not survive, I would die, whatever happened. Or I'm not able to feel this fear and go through it. There was maybe not the environment who could be there for you or could hold that, could be in attunement with you. If you have an environment where something really difficult happens and there are people immediately there who can be there with you, and they are open and they feel you and they have compassion and they have empathy, and you are seen, your pain is seen, and other people allow you to feel fully because they know how to feel. Often, our parents or environment, they also have the same, fear, you're fine, here, ice cream, yeah? Or you experience pain, they are not able to feel with you the pain because they learned feeling pain, I would break apart. So not feeling pain. So they pass on to you because they don't know better, because they didn't learn it, and their ancestors didn't learn. I experienced that very, very deeply. I didn't know how to feel pain. And it's still fucking hard. And I had ancestral lines who there was no place to feel pain. They had to survive. They were in the war. They had to survive, and they didn't know. I think many people have that. So I think trauma happens in how I see it, or it's just a word, but what I see is when we have to suppress certain parts, certain emotions, because there's no space to fully feel them, because when it's fully felt, I think it can't get this block, it can't get this frozen part, and if it's fully felt, energy goes through it, and it gets part of us. It gets not separated, it flows with us, it's one. But if there's something happening, what we can't take, for whatever reason, it gets pushed by side, and then we create programs and dynamics not to feel that. And then in the end, these programs and dynamics are controlling our life. But when we get aware, we can untie them, we can see them, and step by step, some people fast, some people slow, whatever fast and slow is, but they can address these things, and they can get aware, oh, now I have this defense mechanism, and now I do that because I don't want to feel that. And the more we bring that in daily life, what is for me integration, what is for me, I call it like also inquiry. I like the word inquiry, to ask questions, to self-inquiry. And the more we can get aware about that and seeing, I think the more it gets loose and the more we can bring it in through feeling, through seeing to us, and we get whole. And I think the plants can be very, very supportive. But also said that, I think it depends individually if we can just do that with the plants, or if it's good to have a facilitator, to have a therapist, or to have a mentor, someone who is helping you and supporting you, giving you some tools how to work with that and how to see it. I believe I was mostly by myself. I didn't have facilitators, besides in the beginning, but when I went deeper in diets, there were no facilitators. It was just the Shipibo shaman and me. I think many things for me needed more time to see and acknowledge, much more time. I think if I would have someone who would know about that, I think I could realize and heal certain parts or bringing them more in awareness much faster. But I also see the value. For me personally, it needed more time to see, and to get aware, but it's okay, it's fine. Did this answer your question?
Yeah. How would you describe that role as a facilitator? Because that's something you find yourself in now in various situations. So what is that role, and why do you think it's important?
I think we as facilitators, so especially when we went through our own diets, and we have knowledge about the energetically finer layers, and we have knowledge about different approaches, for our Western mind and how we live life. I see myself as bridging like the energetically work which is happening in ceremony with the plants through the Maestros. Of course, also it continues in life out, like bridging that with support, guidance, how to process, mentally, emotionally, spiritual things, and to ask questions. For me, it gets more and more like asking questions, because I trust that every one of us has the answers and the wisdom inside, and this is where my trust and my questions and my work comes from. So I really like to see, where is someone at, what happens, and then asking questions, to encourage someone to feel inside, to look inside. Maybe I can give some reflections which are helpful to open awareness and open doors for the person to see. And maybe I can give some tools, which are resonating with the person to work with, to work through, and building up a field of trust. I mean, it depends individually, where is the person, what does the person want, and what does the person need. So it's like being really present, seeing the individual, and giving reflections and bridging and connecting dots that the person in itself can find the power of healing and wholeness and connection. Compassion. I mean, compassion is a big one, to remind people and support people to find compassion for self. Because this changes the frequency. If we are in blame and if we are in shame, this lowers the vibration. And there are certain ways, I think, how we can bring awareness to have compassion to self, to give reflections, to see, hey, when you were little, and going back down, when did you learn that, And then seeing, okay, if you sometimes you cannot see it for yourself, but if you imagine, like a small girl or boy in that age going through that? Do you see, what this person made it mean and why you learned that and that? And hey, we are all humans, and we take things on. And that's a human experience that we inherited, and then that we give that we pass on to our children, and that we receive from our ancestors things, and we are then the generator or transformator. That's just being a human, and we don't need to blame self or others for anything. It's just good if we can acknowledge and see, and then taking responsibility to shift, and seeing we have a choice now and the power to shift and change things. We are not stuck there. We can shift it, and taking this responsibility and seeing it as responsibility instead of blame and judgment, the sense of possibility and choice and responsibility for change, I think, can empower.
Why do you think that's, I think for many people that will resonate. For some people that I think it can be triggering for them. Why do you think it, maybe you don't think, but if so, why, if that's triggering for people, why that is? And two, why do you think that's so hard for people to let go?
Let go of?
The blame, the judgment.
We are so used to it. It's a condition. It's a pattern that might be triggering as well. Why is it difficult to let go of judgment and blame? Because there's a disconnection, a missing part of the experience of love and compassion. That's a process. It can be a process. Some people are maybe they access it more easy, and for some it needs more time. And I believe it's ancestral stuff as well. And we have the power to change, always. I think it really starts with awareness and acknowledging where things come from, and how are we able to transform where we give our intention, and where do we put the intention, and what do we believe? If I believe there's no love, or if I have the pattern I don't trust in love, or if I have the experience I never experienced empathy and compassion in all my life, that's hard. And that can cause a lot of suffering. And if we learn, to blame and to be judgmental, these are really ingrained deep patterns. And breaking through that, the plants are very powerful with that, because they just can shift these patterns. They can, through the energy of the plants and the consciousness and the information what the plants carry, that's the power of the plants. They really can break through. But I also believe with just, talking and space, you also can get there to connect to compassion and love, and realizing where's the judgment coming from. It would need some time. When did you believe that the first time? And and where did you learn that? And but when you go down to the root, you can realize that there's a different perspective how you can perceive yourself and life.
Yeah, I'm also just thinking this time we're in with the pandemic. Those two words actually really resonate as very strong. If I go on social media, or if you look at the news, there's a tremendous amount of blame and judgment. And I think for most people, when we do that, we feel right. It seems like the blame and the judgment, an inherent quality of that is I'm right. Therefore I can blame, therefore I can judge, because I'm right and the other person is wrong.
Yeah.
How do you see one can begin to shift that? Because it seems like that quality, if I truly believe that I'm right, then I'm justified in judging, or I'm justified in blaming. And even, I guess, if we talk about trauma, right, it's very easy to say, well, this person did something to me, I'm right, they were wrong, I'm justified to blame them, I'm justified to judge them because I'm right. Why would I ever want to shift that? That would almost make me wrong and like elevate them to the status of like they win now. They got their way at the end.
Yeah. I mean, there are different things, you know. I mean, what does it give you to feel right? What is the difference between right and wrong? And why do people need to feel right? You know, what does it mean? Where did you learn you need to feel right? I mean, where did humans learn that they need to feel right? I mean, that's for me such a thing, you know. Why do I need to be right? And why do I need someone to be wrong? And I mean, the thing of traumata, if someone did something to you which were harming you, I mean, there comes in also the word forgiveness, right? And forgiveness doesn't mean that, for me, it doesn't mean to say to someone what you did is right. Forgiveness means for me to let go of blaming someone and kind of accepting what happened in the past, like acceptance. I heard, like, I can't remember who said it, but it's like letting go of the hope of the past, something like that. So letting go of the idea what I think should have happened. And it's a favor for self, because if you feel resentment, or if you feel resentment towards someone, you harm yourself. And in the end, you could get even physically sick, you know. And it's not, forgiveness doesn't mean that you say what you did is right. No, it's more like I let go and I accept what happened. And I accept that something happened to me what caused a lot of pain. And now I work through the pain. And I mean, it's a huge step. And it's also not that someone should forgive. I think it's forgiveness comes when someone realizes it and that it gives liberation for self. It gives liberation for self. And I think acceptance, it's such a deep exploration as well, you know. Do we accept mentally, or do we accept really deeply with our heart something? And can we really let go? And really, acceptance for me is also trust in universe, you know. Whatever happens in universe, I see that I learn, I see that I grow, and I see whatever happens, it's my challenge to grow and to expand and to go this path. And what is right and what is wrong, does it really matter? Who is judging what is right and what is wrong, and how free can you be if you let go of right and wrong, and just making maybe more the inner work and seeing what is in alignment and authenticity and integrity for you, in you, and how can you change the world in being in integrity in you instead of blaming. And as you know, as we often work, like when we introduce like a group, and when a group comes and we say, hey, maybe you might feel triggered, but always when you put the finger out there, put it back to you and see what it means for you, and there's the work. And everything what we see in the outside and what we blame and where we feel triggered, it's always something what we didn't solve for ourselves. Because if you are in peace and in harmony, you would not feel triggered through someone else, at least not in this urgency or not in this explosion, you know. I think if we have an explosion inside, it's inside, it's not out there. So it needs to look at it, and what is for you integrity and authenticity to respond to it. And I mean, there it's for me like also like the responding to something in the outside. That's for me like a big work again and again to create a space from which energy do I respond to the outside. Because if I respond because I feel triggered, or there's some fear or whatever, and I use this energy to respond, I create also fear, I create frustration, I create anger. But if I'm able to be peaceful and in harmony inside, and I'm able to choose consciously how I respond, then I can really transform the event or what's happening there. And I think when we blame, we just give this blame and judgment more energy, and we create more, and it multiplies. And and I think we create. It's really interesting when you observe from which energy we put out there, because this is, the more we learn about that, the more responsibility also we have around it.
Yeah, and it seems like that act of judging or blaming, it seems like it can almost be addictive, because there at least seems to be a temporary boost of the ego. I don't know if dopamine or serotonin is released, but it often seemingly feels good, right? Like, I'm right. It's even that word I. It's creating or building the sense of self. Like, I am right. But ultimately, I think if any of us look at our own lives, we see that the feeling we're eventually left with is a feeling of not good. To judge or to blame, there's always some sort of anger in there, resentment, and you mentioned this idea of liberation. I mean, to liberate ourselves from that is to be free of that. But and that also seems to some degree of like taking one's power back. Because as long as I'm lost in this relationship of blaming, of judging, I'm never free. Just in the literal sense, there's someone else who's still connected to me in that way. Yeah. There's a relationship that I'm continuing to feed by judging them, by blaming them.
Yeah. And what about also, to think about, okay, what I see in the other person, could it be also a part of me, or what part in humanity it is? And like when we, I think we spoke about that somehow before.
Well, that's something I think from my experience doing this work is, I think Byron Katie says it really well and funny. She says, when you fight reality, you lose, but only 100% of the time. And I see that same thing with judgment, actually, is that it's actually 100% of the time.
Yeah.
When we judge, that it's actually coming from something in us that's still unresolved.
Yeah.
Because, if I resolve that thing in myself, then I can see it in someone, but there's not a judgment. How could I judge them if I was doing the same thing?
Yeah.
And if I've overcome that, then I think the natural human phenomena is, well, can I help that person? Do they want help?
Yeah.
Maybe they don't, but then there's...
Yeah.
It's they're in their process.
Yeah.
And I think, it's also important that it doesn't mean like someone just like sits on a couch all day and doesn't do anything.
No, not at all.
It's actually the opposite.
Yeah.
It's if one is truly free in that moment, whatever is arising is actually, one can fully engage in that.
Yeah.
I mean, if there's a dog outside, if someone came and started hitting him, I wouldn't start judging or blaming the person. There would just be a natural reaction of, no, I have to go stop that, because the dog is getting hurt.
Yeah.
And then understanding, like, why were they doing that?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that doesn't mean we can't be harsh, we can't be firm.
No.
We can't.
But getting more and more aware, or that we don't project from inside out. And how can I change, or how can I help? You use the word help. How can I help, or how can I change the frequency or energy in my environment? And if I'm reacting out of anger or fear, that's not helpful. That's never helpful, I would say. Maybe I'm wrong, but...
It's also one of these really interesting martial arts principles. If I'm pushing and the guy's pushing back, we're just kind of in this back and forth. Neither of us is getting anywhere. But if he's pushing and I can use that, and then I actually I use less force, I end up in a better position, in a better way. But so many of us, I think we're in that mindset of like, if something's wrong, I have to deal with it in that same, as you said, that same energetic frequency, which just ends up creating more. And I think we all know that, you know.
Yeah.
If someone is judging us, we don't respond in a good way to that. If someone is blaming us or someone's telling us what to do,
Yeah.
I mean, the natural human reaction is to pull back from that, or you know, to push into it.
Yeah. Yeah. And also, you know, on an energetically layer, what I also, I think it came up in some of my diets also, like, how can I protect myself? What does it mean to protect? You know, if people are around me full with fear, and right now I think we're living in a time where people, there's so much fear, and it's even, you know, through media, etc. The fear is increasing, and I realized, you know, when I have sometimes, like just right now with this thing, what's going on in the world, when people are full in fear and talking a lot about it, sometimes I had moments where it took over, you know, and I felt also the fear. So for me, it's also like, okay, I'm aware there is this fear, but then I'm also aware that I have trust. And if I'm in my trust energy and I can center there, then I'm not resonating with this fear. But if I go in resonance with the fear, I'm in resonance, I'm in vibration with the fear, and I make it even stronger, and it's dominating me. So how can I not go there? And it was for me like really finding the place of trust energy. Also, I have my trees, I have to say. I can, you know, it's my way to sing to them. I don't have to do that loud. And then the vibration from the tree comes in, and I'm with that. And it's not, then I was like, yeah, but I don't want to ignore what's happening outside. But I'm aware that this is there, but I'm not going into it. I stay in my frequency, or I use like the trees or the sense of trust, or, you know, some people have maybe the earth, or they have other elements which they call in to be in this frequency, to not go on the same wavelengths like the fear. And do you have some experience with that? You know, like how not to engage with strong feelings, like, for example, fear. How not to engage and not to increase, but being aware that it's there.
Yeah, I thought of an example. I think it was a week or two ago when I was talking to a friend of mine. She's a medical doctor in Cusco, and she wrote me out of the blue, and she's like, "Jason, are you okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm fine." And I had COVID, you know, a number of months ago, and you know, it was fine. But she's like, you know, the hospitals are overwhelmed. I'm seeing so many people every day. My brother who had COVID, he's been reinfected again. And I could feel that same thing, because for the last, I mean, pretty much since the pandemic has started, I've consciously, I think, made a choice not to live in that state of fear. Now, that doesn't mean 100% of the time I'm not. But it kind of, like you were talking about, a lot was also a process of inquiry. Like, what is this? What are the actual effects? You know, what are the chances of getting it? What are the chances once I have it? What is it going to do? You know, what are the trade-offs between living in your house all day and not doing anything versus going outside? What's the trade-off between wearing a mask, not wearing a mask, washing your hands? You know, and how often do you do that? Do you wash your hands constantly? Do you carry a bottle around all day? Do you do it 5 times a day, 3 times a day? You know, so that's where I think a lot of the problem is when we talk about these things like absolutes, you know, or follow the science, you know, that doesn't exist. I mean, everything is relative. Everything has inherent risk. I mean, if I really wanted to be safe, I'd walk around with my motorcycle helmet all day, because there's a chance that I could fall and die, or an Ayahuasca fruit could fall on my head and kill me. That actually happens. A coconut could fall on my head and kill me. But we all have to make some sort of assessment of what risk we're willing to take. Otherwise, there's no life. I mean, so when she said that to me, I actually noticed very strongly this like emerging of like fear. You know, I could feel my heart beating a little faster. My mind started going to that place of like, well, what if I do get it again? What if it's worse? You know, all of these stories that the mind says. You know, should I wear my mask all the time now? Should I stop going out? But what was fascinating, kind of like I said, is, you know, that probably lasted, I would say, 10 minutes. And then I just, kind of like that process you described of inquiry was going back to, what do I know? What do I believe in? What principles do I hold to be true? And, you know, again, what is fast, as you said, what is fast, what is slow? You know, 10 minutes is still 10 minutes, but it wasn't 10 hours, it wasn't 10 days, it wasn't 10 years. And, you know, I found myself then back in the state I was before, like, okay, there is that, that's a reality. She's a doctor, she's not making anything up. And this is how I choose to live and what I choose to do. And so, you know, and fear is so strong. I mean, this is something I've talked about a lot in some of the podcasts. I probably talked about it in workshops. But for me, fear is the primordial emotion. Everything, for me, extends from what I've seen, not only in myself, but, you know, in many, many people I've worked with, is fear is the primordial emotion. It's, you know, in the archetypes of so many religions, so many spiritual traditions, it's the split. It's the split from union to separation. And the mind is part of that duality. The mind is something physical. It's real. So the mind can know, in Taoism they would say the 10,000 things, all of the manifestation of reality. The mind can potentially know all of those things. It's incredible. And yet it can never know what was before that. It can never know union because the mind itself is part of separation. And so when the mind tries to comprehend what it can't know, the emotion that arises is fear. You're literally going into the unknown, and the mind doesn't know what to do. I mean, literally, you can start shaking or, you know, whatever it is, because it doesn't have a way to comprehend that. And that's terrifying for the mind, to not know.
Especially when it's about life-threatening things, right?
For sure. And that's why, you know, the fear of death is the strongest. And that, you know, again, some people maybe say they're not afraid of death, but nobody's died, so nobody really knows that to be true. But certainly, you know, I think when people find themselves in those situations, and often plant work is an amazing way to actually see that. And, you know, I've seen many people, you know, we worked with special forces, Navy SEALs, people who have seemingly no fear of death, and ayahuasca comes and it humbles them. It terrifies them. I mean, that's the story of the Bhagavad Gita, you know, when Krishna shows Arjuna himself in his infinite forms, you know, he's terrified, he's humbled because the mind can't comprehend that. So, you know, I think fear it's natural, it's inherent to the human process, and it's I think, as you said, a process of inquiry. Like, how do we go into that? Because fear is always, it's always a projection of some future event, which is the unknown, because we actually have no idea what's going to happen in 2 seconds, in 1 year, in 2 years. Obviously, it's like, you know, diminishing returns. I have a fairly good idea of what's going to happen in 2 seconds. In 2 minutes, maybe still a decent idea. You know, I'm projecting what's going to happen. You're probably going to take another puff, or, you know, this podcast is going to continue. But in 2 days less, in 2 years less, in 20 years less, in 200 years even less, in 2,000 years even less, in 2 million years. You know. So, you know, I think all fear comes from that projection of the future. You know, like you were saying with COVID, like, what if this happens? What if we go into lockdown? What if? It's always what if. What if I get sick? What if I die? What if I don't have any money? What if, you know, all of these things. What if I get hit by a car? What if I get COVID? What if my father dies? What if my partner dies? What if my kid dies? And that's very difficult because in the moment there's nothing we can do about that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's where part of hopefully the solution arises is in this moment, what can I do?
Mm-hmm.
Because I can't do something in 2 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
I can't do something in 2 years. But
Mm-hmm.
right now, there are actions that I can take
Mm-hmm.
that will allow, as you said, I mean, that's a huge part of choice.
Mm-hmm.
Choice is extremely empowering.
Mm-hmm.
So what do I have the ability to do
Mm-hmm.
that hopefully negates that fear?
Mm-hmm.
If I'm really afraid of being poor, I'm really afraid of getting COVID, what are the steps that I can take that will make me personally, not the world, not someone else, because that's also where the blame and judgment comes in, right? Like you have to do that rather than what can I do, for myself in this moment, for the people I care about. And I think when we're acting from that state, that fear isn't really there. It's when we're actually doing, when we're enacting, fear is usually quite far removed. Talking about Koh it's an example I sometimes use. I was Thai boxing there.
Mm-hmm.
The whole day leading up to the fight, super nervous, super afraid. Why? Because my mind was thinking about what if I get knocked out, what if I lose, what if I break my leg, what if I don't last a round. As the fight gets closer, it gets more intense. When it's 24 hours away, it's there, but it's not super intense. As it gets closer and closer, it's more and more intense. Up until the moment when you're in the ring and you're doing the dance, and there's that, I don't know if you've ever seen a fight, but there's that very particular music playing, almost like snake charming music. It's putting you and your opponent, the audience, in a very particular state of consciousness. And that fear is still there. But once I found, once the bell rang, once that guy hit me for the first time, there was no fear. Because my mind was no longer in the future, it was here. Because if my mind ever went somewhere else, boom, I'd get hit again, and that brought me right back. And then it just becomes this dance of he moves, I move, I do this, he does that. And in that moment, there's no fear. And that seemingly would be the time where there should be the most fear, right? Because that's when the thing is actually happening. But there wasn't.
So you agree that the emotions, our body respond to the mind, to the thought?
For sure, yeah.
Yeah. And I think, the awareness around it, I'm also in the process, like, okay, this is an emotion. It's like dramatic and a lot of movement, whatever kind of emotion, all kind of emotions. And to realize, okay, this is the emotion, like a body respond to the mind. But then also there's more like a gut feeling, a gut sensation, gut feeling. And that's different, but that's more calm. That feels more calm and more true. And I mean, more true is relative, but it feels more calm and more grounded. And sometimes for me, I'm in the process of distinguishing, okay, gut feeling or like emotion, which is more like moving and can be very intense, And then also there's the sense of intuition, guidance, and this is I'm in the process, since a while, like distinguishing these different sensations, emotions, also for doing choices, using for decisions, And I think what you said also, and what also I said, the choice, and I think choice. We have more clarity about choice the more we get aware about all this different, how we operate, these different parts, our thoughts, our emotions, gut feeling, intuition, and we can come there through inquiry, and through the plants and different things we learn about self. I think choice is so important because many people are not familiar with that. I mean, I don't know what you think, but I know many people who say they don't have a choice. And I think the choice starts so much earlier than we are aware sometimes about.
Yeah, and I think all of those things, they come from fear, that feeling like I don't have a choice, or even the blame, the resentment. It's coming, like we're using maybe the COVID situation, like if this person doesn't wear a mask, or if this, that's where the blame comes, but it's coming from a fear. It's coming from a fear of, other people control me, they affect me, that I don't have the power. And that's when we look to all of these other outside sources. I need the government to protect me.
Yes.
I need them to give me money. I can't work, but I need them to give me money. I need them to feed me, to protect me. Their military needs to protect me, and
dependency.
It becomes dependency, and it's. I mean, I think that's what's talked about. Slavery is the worst thing a human can experience. I think, and I think we know that in the physical form. But I don't think we realize that, most of us, we become our own slave master. We create the conditions that don't allow us to be free. And and I think that's a huge part of, as you're saying, this plant work is if we can understand ourselves, these parts, then we can begin to make choices that don't perpetuate that enslavement of ourselves.
Yeah, what guides to empowerment and self-mastery and self-leadership. Yeah. And I also feel like knowing how our brain works, knowing how our body works, getting to know more and more how everything is connected, gives us also the possibility to create this space of choice. Because when we know, I react like that because of that and that, and I hear my body, I feel that and that pressure, and the fear actually makes me believing I don't have a choice. And I grew up also like our environment, how we grew up, like when we recognize all these things and on a daily basis, what is integration for me as well, like learning to recognize and notice all these things leads us all also to more responsibility and the joys. And I think we talked about it a while ago also. For me, like what is so interesting I would like to bring up, it's like the Shipibos in ceremony, the shamans, healer, maestros, onayas. Onaya is ona, wisdom, knowing, and onaya, the one who knows. Like what they really often do when they sing the Icaro, and they go to the root of the thought, the Shinan Tapon, all the time. People who drink the first time, also when we drink many times, it often, and especially in the beginning, very, very much, but still later on. I mean, we are again, we get it sounds a little bit funny, maybe we sucio, we get like a little bit dirty, because we connect with our thoughts and we connect with our mind to things, and we take in confusion, or we take in fear, or we take in preocupación, worries, like all the things because we are always in interaction, right? Our mind, I see mind like our whole system here. It's not just thoughts, it's connected to emotions, because we know it's connected. We are engaging, with our environment, and we get again triggered and all things come up. But they work a lot with the root of the thought. And they often many things, like also many things, like when they have when there's a challenge or a problem, they also go into the root of the challenge or the problem. So when we access and we learn more about that, and we ask our questions, like we just discussed about it on a psychological base. What is the root of a thought, or what is the root of a decision, or what is the root of fear? So we talk about that. We are aware about that also in our language and how we inquire about self. And for me, it's always interesting when I see this on an energetically layer, how the maestros work with the Icaro, like the vibration, the energy, what they channel from the plant world through a Icaro, through a word. The word, what they sing, has intention. That's also good to see. From which intention does the shaman sing from? Mm-hmm. Pick your shamans really well. So they have intention. They have a root of their Icaro and the intention where they sing from, and then they go into the root of your thoughts and clean them and bring them in alignment, and until the energy flows, until it's connected to. They also have like the God energy, the light energy, the love, and then the different plant energies. Sometimes they have the different elements, or the universe, different planet energies or stars. Sometimes even animals. And they use these energies to clean the root of your thoughts again and again. And then they have the big thought, like the Anishinan, like the big thought, where they also bring in alignment your thought and the root of your thought with the big thought of the whole world, like maybe consciousness, like that, And I think also this is a choice, like when we really, really reflect on from what is the energetically root of my thoughts, and how can I clean them, and having a choice from which energy do I think, from which energy do I feel, and then creating my action out of that. And what does it mean with being in alignment with my integrity, and what do I declare? This is something what I learned from Richard. Mm-hmm. Declaring, maybe I use other words, but this comes through him in my individual way. What values do I declare as my values? What do I declare as my compass? What do I declare as my alignment, And connecting that to what I just explained, also what the Shipibos energetically do, for me it's fascinating to bring that in daily awareness and I love my job as well, that like when people are open and they come to dietas and they come to my groups, or or in the center, in the temple where we work together, like really when people are open and curious, and you can share that, and you can see how it resonates and how it helps and supports them. And sometimes people book some online sessions with me and continue the work. I love that. That's so fascinating to explore also together,
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot there. I mean, as you were saying, that a lot of the work that the shamans are doing is getting to the root of our thoughts, mm-hmm. which I think a lot of people don't really think about.
Yeah.
And then also the word. Even like with the Shipibo, they'd often say like that the language they're speaking isn't Shipibo. It's this ancient, Shipibo. It's mm-hmm. this ancient language that was taught to them, because those words actually have a certain power.
Yeah.
And even this idea, like, again, you said choice, like choosing the words, mm-hmm. that's such a powerful thing, mm-hmm. because that literally shapes our reality.
Yes.
When I interviewed Brian, he was talking about that, how there was actually like a value system based in the language of like what is good, what is serving mm-hmm. wholeness, what is serving, mm-hmm. Nature, that's intrinsically good, mm-hmm. that which is separating or splitting or creating mm-hmm. separate parts, the blame, the judgment, that's inherently in the language system seen as not good. And that's such a powerful thing that I think we forget, is like our words are choices that we're using. Are we using them for good? Are we using them for union?
Yes.
Or are we using them for separation?
Yes. Yes.
And this is extremely powerful. And I mean, even some of these medicines, like tobacco, coca, they're seen as giving strength to the word, as giving sweetness to the word.
Yeah.
Because without that, we end up creating that division through our words. So how do we change that? How do we change it to something that's grounded, something that's sweet, something that resonates?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, which is fascinating, even that word, like resonate, you know, it actually means sound, like it has a similar resonance.
Yeah.
So connecting to that resonance of words that are sweet, that are grounded, that are supporting nature, that are supporting harmony, union, which is the essence of all of these spiritual traditions.
Yeah.
And I think that's what you also mentioned is, I mean, even in dietas, when one is doing a diet, that's often something that's really emphasized, is you have to be very careful with your thoughts. If you're thinking negative thoughts, you're hitting the diet, you're crossing the diet. You have to be very careful with your words.
Yeah.
You know, if you're getting angry at someone or you're judging someone, that's going to affect you, and it's going to affect them.
Yeah.
And
you're so open. Everyone is so open during diet. You feel the word more from the other or from self.
Yeah.
It resonates.
And I think these are things we often don't think about a lot. Is actually the power of the word, which is a power of choice too. You know, what am I choosing to say?
Which tone? The tone comes again from the root. From where do I use the energy to talk? Yeah. Yeah. And also, you know, what I think is fascinating with the tobacco, but maybe you have to say something to that. I like so much that the element of air is also, I mean, there are all the elements in it, but the air, for me, like the smoke, the air, is like really also transporting even more the intention, or connecting the dimensions, or and the air is also in the word, it's in the breath. So I find this also very interesting. And I mean, in many traditions, the air is a huge element of transportation and connection, right?
And of truth. I mean, that's often one of the qualities of tobacco. Is, I mean, even like in present day U.S., many of the Native American people, there was this idea of the pipe or the peace pipe. And when there was a meeting or a gathering, you know, often to resolve something or to bring up an issue, the pipe was passed around, and everyone inhaled the smoke. And the idea was that in a way, once we spoke after that shared experience, but with tobacco, very specifically tobacco, that one was able to speak their truth in a way, to come from a place of something that was firm and real, and this idea that when a resolution was made, the tobacco was then smoked, and it was like the pact, like the handshake. And, you know, I mean, I think that's also something fascinating, which, I mean, we don't really do it so much anymore, but there's still traces of it, like, you know, signing something. I mean, we still do that. I mean, what do you do when you sign something? You're saying, I give my word, I give my name. You know, and for a long time, that was the only form of agreement, was your signature. That meant everything. I mean, it's kind of strange that we still do it, you know, in this day and age, but it's because it has that meaning. And before signing, it was a handshake.
And your word.
Or before that, it was just my word, like, I am going to do this.
Yeah.
And that meant you were going to do it.
Yeah.
And if you didn't, you had no respect in your society. You weren't even a person to some degree, because you had no word, you had no honor.
Yeah.
And I mean, now I think, you know, so many people, we're so loose with our words, we're so loose with our commitments. I mean, I see it so often, you know, people say they're going to do something, and then, oh, well, this came up, or this, or I'm not feeling it, or this other thing. And, but we, in a sense, we give away our power.
We do, yeah. It reminds me that I told you I'm here at 12 and I came at 12:30. That's with the time. I have to say that's always a tricky thing for me. Yeah, but to the word and integrity and connecting it to presence and change. So this also for me has its place, that time also is change, and the world and we are individually and everything in nature, the seasons in the year, it's always changing. Always everything is changing. I mean, our skin, luckily, our thoughts, our learning. Maybe I said something today and I will listen to it in a few days, in a few weeks, and I would say, oh, today I would say it a little differently. So, yeah, word, integrity, meaning of the word, but also in connection to, hey, everything is always changing. Where is also the movement and the being present? And hey, right now in the present moment, I'm different. I feel different. And last week I said that, but now I feel different. For me also, it's a very fine line, and it's again and again. It's sometimes it's clear for me, and sometimes I'm struggling with it. At what moment it's my integrity, and it needs its place, and honoring that I say, hey, things were changing, I feel different, or now my word is a little bit different, and in which moments it feels true for me. No, I said that and now I have to do it, but it doesn't feel anymore totally in alignment, in integrity, because things just changed. And this is for me sometimes difficult to find. Sometimes it's clear, but sometimes it's also oof, How is that for you? Because also this I want to add, I had that a while ago, maybe I shared that with you. I declared things as my value, and it was also together what I learned in diets. That's right for me, and this is something I need to do, and I have to be in alignment with my diets and with the teachings for my diets, with the Shipibo tradition, and I have to be really straight with that. And this was something I started to believe. And it was in that time when I was like in 2016 I started, 17, 18, also beginning of 19, I did a lot of dietas. Like my main focus was on dieting. When I had free time, dieting. And it was certain things also from my lineage, what they told me, what I need to do, where I have to stick to rules in my diet. I have to stick to that to contain the energy of this tree, and I took it on, and it felt right. It really felt right. But then I had a moment where I was like, I think I declared things which are right and as guidance and as a compass, and right now I feel it's limiting me as who I am right now. And I want to be more open, and I want to be more flexible, and I want to do other things again which are not completely in this alignment of these rules my maestros gave me. And I started a little bit to dance and play and be more flexible, to see, if this is true. Because sometimes you declare something to your value, you start to believe it, but then it gets at some point in your life maybe limiting, and it blocks you to be fully yourself. You know what I mean? And then there's also maybe a limitation and a change necessary, or more flexibility or more movement.
Well, I think, that's a big part of Richard's work. So if anyone is interested, I think a podcast, I think it was two or three podcasts ago, Richard Condon. But I think that's one thing he says is like, obviously there's going to be change, but that's where our word is also very important, is expressing that. Yes. Like, hey, this thing has come up. I'm very sorry. I've backed out of my commitment. How can I make this up? Which is very different from, hey, I can't make it. Yeah, right. Things are changing. How can we meet? How can we connect? How can we do that? Yeah. And also I think, I think as you were saying, like the more we get to know ourselves, hopefully the more we can know what is in alignment with where we're at, which is always changing. So, if someone says, hey, there's a party in 2 weeks, do you want to go? Probably my answer would be, I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. But maybe let's talk 2 days before and I'll see how I feel. If it's not something I really know at that moment. But maybe, like another example, there's a Temazcal in like 2 weeks and I'm going to go. Like I gave my word because that has value to me. It really means something. And so, almost inevitably, like the night before Temazcal, I'm like, oh, I don't know, it's going to be intense, But part is I gave my word, and that's what makes me go, is because I said I was going to do it. Because I know when I gave my word that I was going to do it, that it was good for me. There's an anticipation. It's kind of like ceremony too. It's like it's going to be good for you, but as it gets closer, you're like, there's a lot of reasons why you could back out. All sorts of things will start to come up. But then it's a difference too. Like, did I give my word I was going to be there? Because that also affects other people too. Like people, we're a facilitator. If one day we said, oh yeah, I don't know, I don't feel like coming today, that has a huge impact. So is that impact worth whatever is in the way of me honoring my word too?
Yeah.
I really like what Richard says too, which is this idea, which we all do, is, I say I'm going to be somewhere at 5 p.m. and I show up at 6, and the first thing that's usually out of my mouth is, yeah, there was an accident on the road or something. That's why I'm late. And, really changing that, which I really like, which he teaches, is this idea of the first thing that comes out of your mouth is, I'm very sorry, I didn't honor my commitment. And that has a much different resonance. It's putting, the one is putting responsibility on the accident, as if that's the reason I wasn't here, and the other is saying I didn't honor my commitment. And that has a much different resonance to how, because either way I didn't do it. But I think one carries a much, as you said, this idea of resonance or frequency, one carries a much higher resonance or frequency. It's taking responsibility. I'm sorry, I didn't honor my commitment. And if you'd like to know, this is the reason, there was a really bad accident.
Yeah.
Well, you had mentioned some of these other interests you have, which you're trying to find. I think, as you said, like the balance of how to mix the plant work with these other processes. What about those interest you? And maybe could you like talk a little about those? Like you mentioned the Gabor Mate work, the Schweitzer, was that his?
Dr. Richard Schwartz.
Yeah, Schwartz, yeah. What is it in those that you see is very complementary, and what for you kind of like lights you up and makes you interested in those things?
As my calling is to connect, like the ancestral wisdom, or what we learn, universal wisdom, what I see as what the plants are teaching us when we committed to diets, what we learn there, and to connect it to Western modern life with the intention for me that people connect more and more to their true self. True self for me means finding where we talked about before, finding empowerment, finding self-mastery, and distinguishing when they act out of this inner, deeper source, or when they act out of learned personality, which are just patterns we learned, and very often they separated us to how we really were born and what is really there and wants to be expressed. So for me, the most powerful thing is, and what is for me like the intention why I do what I do, like supporting people who want to connect and find their inner strengths, their inner truth. I call it truth. For me, it's the right word, even if it triggers for people things. It's like a subjective inner truth, what I feel and what I sense, which feels very, very deep, and which is mostly somewhere here. And where is authenticity, finding who you really are, finding the empowerment and trust and connection, and with the result that you create your life that it feels fulfilled, you know? When you have a day where you know you will die, what everyone from us will have, maybe someone has an accident and it happens faster, but usually we have, I think, how I imagine, we have this moment, you know, where we know, oof, now we are dying. And what I hear is that there's this, you know, sometimes people have this, my life was, you know, like all in all, it's good, you know, all in all, it feels good. And I think like when we live connected to our true self or true essence, and we use this energy in our creations in life, I think it gives us the feeling of, in my experience, of fulfillment. I'm in my full potential and I'm living out of something true inside of me, what wants to go out. And the plants for me are like amazing, but not for everyone. Some people maybe don't want to drink the plants. And then I'm learning now, and I feel very inspired, this different approaches. How can I connect and support people? Not how I can connect, how can I support people to connect to their true self, to find this inner essence. And this starts with seeing patterns, realizing things which are blocking us, emotional patterns or frozen traumas or belief systems. Okay, how can I acknowledge them, seeing them, and how can I make them more transparent, or releasing them, or putting them a little in the background so I can make space in myself to connect to self. And there are these different approaches I learned, and for me they are all very in alignment, you know, like with compassionate inquiry, where you find ways with people to make these patterns more transparent, and finding compassion because you go to the root of the pattern and you see where you created it, and you see that actually it was something what helped you at some point to survive. At some point when we break it down, it helped you to survive, and it was actually very smart at that time to learn that. And when you realize that, but it's that it's now actually not anymore helping you. Now actually it's limiting and blocking you. And when you go back with compassion inquiry, you almost always go back into childhood. And when you realize where did it got created, this can give a lot of liberation and a lot of freedom, with creating a pathway that you can see it in a compassionate way, and then you can hold it with compassion. And compassion and love has, for me, this frequency, what I also see with the plants, what I learned with the plants. It has this when you have the relationship to something in you or outside of you, and you can have compassion and love, it changes the relationship to it, and it changes your feeling, it changes the perspective, and it helps that this can relax. And when it relaxes, it feels there's a safety, and it can dissolve, and it can change and transform, and it's not dominating you. So what I just said includes things what I learned from the plants and what I learned through compassion inquiry from Gabor. Because for me there's like this psychologically realizing patterns, but then I also, for me, always is like the energetically content in it, and this is it's the same. I mean, it's the same. Like when we realize psychological patterns, thoughts, emotions, we also see, we can see at some point it's all energy. And the Maestros in ceremony, they work with the energy, but how we experience it and how we experience change and where's our work, we can approach it through psychology. So it's the same coin, it's the same, but we can approach it from both directions. And approaching us as a human with psychology and with the energetically seeing can call it spirituality, makes it very powerful, because that's it for me. And also the thing where I'm very curious, and I started to go into with IFS, in internal family system. It's for me very, very interesting, because you see certain things inside of yourself as different parts, and you build up. First you acknowledge and you start to see the different parts as a map, and you can see with the time which parts are connected to which parts, and then you build up relationships to them, and you see, how do I feel towards different parts, and what does this part has to say, and you let the parts speak. Sometimes you let them speak to each other, so this brings a huge awareness what's going on inside of you. I mean, he says we have multiple personalities, which is triggering for many people, but I'm not 100% in alignment with that. But for me, this doesn't matter. It helps to see, like, it's like systemic family therapy. Like when you work with a family, with different people, you see every person has a personality and does something, and it's always in interaction with each other, and it creates a dynamic. But when you internalize that and you see like different emotions, different thoughts, different patterns, they all have a function, and they are all related to each other. And it gets, for me, like for internally work, so powerful to see and connect. It's through meditation as well. Through meditation, I can connect to these different parts, or I can create a safe space with a person, and finding them in the body. Where do they sit? Through the wisdom of the body and sensation, we can address these different parts, and we can take a lot of time with one part, talking with this part, asking for the function. How old are you? Where are you coming from? What do you want to say? Sometimes they speak a lot, sometimes they speak less. And sometimes other parts come in the way, and they don't want that you address this part because maybe it gets too painful. Then you can use the other part as a target. And you think this part, and the more you get aware about this inner map, you also can paint, you can draw a part or put it in colors. I mean, I put a little bit my own things in it. I like to learn different things, but then I can distinguish these different things, but then I can linkage them together. I think it's very powerful to distinguish and see the different properties and values, but then finding linkages to bring them together. And that's really fun and very interesting, and like also like in ceremony, like sometimes I connected to different emotions, or I could see different Utes, how they acted. So for me, like seeing these different parts and letting them talk to each other and asking, hey, could you step a little bit by side? What would happen? What is your fear if you step by side? And then comes the wisdom out of it. It's interesting. It's not coming from my head. It comes words out where I think, wow, and then I understand certain parts in me better, and they don't dominate me at some point anymore. Or I realize them, that's that part which comes up again. And also like the thing like painting them or drawing them, giving them color, like having the reflection. Also often a lot of movement is happening then.
And what is the process of identifying one of those parts?
It's like you go in a silence, you close your eyes. I'm not talking much when I do that with people, but I guide them with breathing a little or grounding, and then I just ask, what is present, What do you feel? And this is something also from Gabor, what goes in. Like, what, sometimes it's just the present moment. What do you feel? Do you feel somewhere tension? What is happening in your body? Just really present without any intention. And then sometimes things are just in the present moment coming up through the body, through a sensation. Or if this pressure, when someone says, I feel this pressure, okay, can you give it, can you allow it to be there? Sometimes depending, can you let it expand? Is it okay to put all your attention in it and being with it? And then at some point, does it has to say something? Does it want to teach something? Sometimes this is an access point. And sometimes people come with the intention, they, oh, I can't decide if I want that or if I want that. For example, I don't want to go there always, but that is another night. It comes up. Vaccination. It's again this topic, but this is just what was present. There's this part who thinks I should do the vaccination, but then there's this other part. Didn't start with talking about parts. I can't decide. Can you help me with this decision? And then, okay, where? Then I guide them a little bit in a calm space and closing the eyes, and then, okay, the part who wants to have the vaccination, where does this live in your body? Can you access it? And the other part who doesn't want, like really slowly with time, where does this live in your body? And then really making space and then looking, okay, what kind of emotions are there and what is there and what comes up? Is there something in between of these two parts? And then also like really making space for texture and color and then sometimes I get so I have a nervousness because some comes from my heart, from my head, and some comes from my heart, and I don't know if I should listen to my head or to my heart. And then, did you experience that in your life before? Is it something new? And then maybe it comes, in childhood, I wanted to do that and that, but my dad was so rational, and I only could feel safe when I was listening to the rational, because I only got love and attachment when I was in the rational mindset. There was no space to listen to my heart. Then you can discover more and more, and going back in the body and seeing where are the parts, what are they saying? What does this one part, does the part which is in your heart and says, no vaccination, does it want to say something to the part in your head? Is there anything, can we open a communication? Is that okay for you? And then, then there are things coming up, which gives again space to inquire. And I don't know how it is for you, but in ceremony, sometimes I have experiences like that,
That you feel you're in touch with different parts of yourself.
Yeah, or which say something, or where images are coming up. Images are coming up, or I see myself in childhood, and I can see, this comes from there and there in childhood. Oh, that's why I feel that, or that's why I'm having this and this protection, and that's why it's influencing my life in that and that way. Sometimes this is unrevealing in ceremony by itself. I don't know. But also I experience now, since 1.5 years, since I'm more going into this other learning, in these different approaches, that actually in online sessions, I can go with people in similar processes. That's very fascinating for me personally, because before, for myself, I did that all with the plants by myself, and then seeing and realizing, interesting, we can also explore that without plant medicine experience. I mean, I sense that my intuition and how I'm being there, the plants and my diets really shaped me, and there is this energy of the plants in me, how I work with people. But people who come for my sessions, they often don't have plant experience. Recently, there are more people who don't have plant experience. So
that's great.
There are different approaches.
You mentioned before we started recording that obviously more people are feeling called to come down and work with these plants and go to particular maestros or lineages, and you were mentioning a little bit about maybe potentially there could be some downside to that. What were you referring to in that way?
So one of my maestros, he's a very strong maestro. I love him. I'm so grateful for him. And for me, he's a very good maestro, and he carries a lot of strength, and he's like a rock. And the more I get to know him, I see his sweetness, because for people sometimes you feel a little bit grumpy, but some of the people from this lineage who I'm working with, they seem a little bit grumpy. And then when when they see how you show up and how committed you are, then they get more soft. But sometimes they get again grumpy. But however, I really love him a lot. But he got quite famous, and I have to say also social media. People saying names. I didn't say. I think I didn't say any names and places where my maestros live, because with social media, the downside for me is that that people just name the maestros. They say where they live. So it goes out so much in the world that so many people just go there. And, he, for example, he doesn't have Western people or Shipibo people who are very experienced with organizing, or people who do a screening before they give them ayahuasca. It's a Shipibo village, and my maestros has some sons who have WhatsApp or Facebook, and sometimes they get a message, can I come? And they always say yes, because there's also we want money, especially from the sons, from my maestro. I don't feel that. I worked first with 2 women from the same lineage and then with him. And I came the first time and he offered me a special price. Never experienced that before from Shipibos. Usually, they learn to get money, and they learn, when I have money, I can buy all the things, and they give it all to the family as well. I mean, all of the maestros I know, they give a lot to the family, but then it has the effect that the other family members don't work anymore because they have the person who gives them the money. One downside. But the other downside, what I also wanted to mention with social media, that just random people come. And I mean, of course, people want to have feeling, people want to learn, but people are just coming there. They don't speak Spanish. They have often really no idea what does it mean to diet a plant for a longer time. What does it mean to go that deep? And maybe they have some really difficult things happen to them in life. Maybe they have a lot of pain to release. Maybe they have a lot of trauma and they never touched on that before. And my maestro and his family, they had built a lot of tambos, more and more tambos and rooms. They have a huge maloka, but they don't have someone who is doing screening. And I mean, I had times where I offered it, but it's, they have a very different mindset, what is organization and structure. And when I say to one of the sons, hey, before someone comes, pass him on to me, and I do a screening, I have questionnaires for my True Journey retreats. So I'm happy to do the screening for you, and, I'm dieting with my maestro, and my maestro is happy, to give me some exchange in diet for my work or whatever. But it doesn't work, The son is not sending the people to me. It's just too difficult for him to organize. Also, the internet, now it's better there, but the internet before was not really good. Then it's just not in their mindset how really to structure and organize. And then also to say to people, you have first to go to a screening, and then Ute sends you back to us, that it's just too much. So it didn't work, And also I have a friend, she lived a long time there, but also this didn't give it more structure or safety or screening. So sometimes what just happens is that many people are coming there, and my maestro has to work not every second night as usual. Sometimes he works then every night because there are so many people. He has to split in different ceremonies. And he's older, and I believe that's not healthy. And often, what I often could see in many Shipibo maestros or older people, it's hard for them to say no. I'm not really clear why they don't say no. And what happened is that there were a few things not good happening. People got psychoses, or people attempted or did suicide at some point. And that's just, it's so important that we have a Western linkage as a facilitator, someone who does screenings before, checking in, Is it okay for you? Is it good for you with the plants? What are your intentions? What are you doing? What do you want to do? What is there some deep stuff? What could come up? What is difficult? What are your biggest challenges in life is a question what I like to ask, because usually the biggest challenges reflect in some way in ceremony. Like all these questions before and preparation, Like I have always before talks with people, sometimes less, sometimes a little more, to really touch and dig into uncomfortable feelings and areas. And sometimes it's difficult for people, but I say, hey, if you come in ceremony, it can go there. So let's get true, let's get authentic, let's get clear. I ask you some questions, you always can tell me when it's not comfortable, but because the plants, they show you truth in their own way. So I like to touch on that before, to see, are you willing to face that, And this is not happening there. So the downside is very often that people not prepared go directly into the Shipibo villages where the maestros, maestras are, and there's not a container and not a support system for the language and for their processes and for guidance and explanations and explaining them that it's not just 1 week or 1 month here, there's a life after, where everything, what happens here has an effect also after. There's an integration, and it will be with you your whole life. And are you really sure you want to commit to face this stuff? Because it will be with you after. And that's the downside.
So what would you recommend for someone who does want to come down and do work?
I would recommend to look for retreats where you have a facilitator. I mean, I offer groups, dietas. I have in July and in November I offer something. I offer private groups. I know other people who are reliable, as Brian, who works also with one of my maestras. I would really recommend to prepare, to do a preparation, to get clear why do you want to do that, and to go to someone who has training, who can provide facilitation, who can provide some guidance, who is there with you to translate not only the language, also helps you to translate the experiences, the tradition, what does it mean, and not just going by self, especially when it's new for you. And new, I work with the Shipibo tradition when the Shipibo tradition is new. If you did other plant medicine by yourself or in different ways or in ceremonies where like music and concert and guitar playing, singing, whatever, this is different. This is just different. I can only talk about Shipibo tradition, but I know there are others. If you go to the Shipibo tradition, it's surgery. It goes deep. It's energetically deep stuff. It's not I go somewhere and I listen to a concert or I listen to some music, and that's a different experience. It's just a different experience than going somewhere and getting really, really in deep, real stuff, which includes shadow and darkness and light, because it belongs together. It's both real.
Mm-hmm. Well, Ute, we are coming up on 3 hours.
Really?
Yeah. Is there anything else you wanted to touch? Any topics or anything?
No, I think we talked about it through different things. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, so what do you have any sense of what the future holds for you, and if people are interested in reaching out to you or working with you, learning? People
can always reach out. I'm most of the time available. What I offer is like 2 weeks or 1 month diets with one of my maestros. They are scheduled, maximum 8 people, at least 3-4 people, maximum 8. Or what I offer is private groups, but I need to know in advance to plan it accordingly with my maestros and with the place I rent. And I offer online sessions where we go into what we talked about. I call it psychospiritual inquiry or compassionate healing journeys. It's always difficult for me to put it in the right, use the right words. But I love to work with people online with plant medicine together or without plant medicine. Yeah.
Yeah, great. Well, I know the family you work with, and I think they're really amazing. They have a really strong lineage, and I think, as you said, I think for most people it is wise to go to something that's organized, that has structure, that works with a facilitator. The family you're working with, super strong. I think has a lot of integrity. So. I think people, if they want to, they would be in really good hands with you. And I know you personally. We work together. It's always a pleasure, and I think you do really amazing work. And if people do want to do that, truejourneys.com?
Truejourney.net. Also true-journey.net. And what I also want to say, like in the dieta space which I hold, I encourage people to be in silence or to do their fasting. I mean, there are different ways to fast, and it's up to everyone by itself. There's also food provided, but also there, if people really want to go deep, I encourage like isolation, and I bring them their food. Also, I'm open, always. Sometimes there are people, they like to have some sharings, but it's like more in the traditional way, It's not that I have like all kind of programs like in a retreat. It's like the plant and you, and then we go in an organic flow. And of course, sometimes sharing can be very powerful. We have a sharing, of course, in the beginning and in the end. But during diet, also when we talked about the word, I just want to mention that very often, to get more clarity about the energy and the breath and the word, is to be in silence, especially when you're in a diet and you recognize and learn so much more about the word and talking and energy. And I mean, diets, and in the end, it's like learning about energies. And they call the main tree where I work with, they call it like the university of learning about energies. I mean, this is how my maestros say. Others would maybe call other trees like the university of shamanism or university of learning about energies. But yeah. Yeah.
Well, great. Well, thank you so much for doing this. It was a pleasure, and I really love working with you. I have a lot of respect for you.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to whenever, wherever. I mean, I'm still in contact with the Temple of the Way of Light. I really honor this center so much, and also Matthew. I had a wonderful talk with him like a week ago, and to the same time exploring other options. Maybe I will also work with a center in Costa Rica, but I will stay in touch for sure with the temple, and I would love to work there with you again, or however life unfolds. Working with you always was a pleasure, and I learned so much from you and with you, Jason.
Yeah, well, thank you. Likewise. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Ute. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you too.
All right, everybody, that is it. I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Ute. I really enjoyed speaking with her. As always, if you're able to help to support this show, that's a really big help to me. Patreon is a really good option. For just a few dollars a month, you can subscribe to different tiers, and they give you different benefits, things like early access to shows, Q&As, bonus material, extended footage. So that's a really big help. To all the people who have done that, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. And if you are able to do that, thank you very much. I would deeply appreciate that. There's also the ability to donate via PayPal, also a link in the show notes. And then if you're not able to do that, simply going on the Universe Within podcast homepage on the YouTube channel and subscribing to the show, turning on the notification bell, liking the video, that's a really big help. And then with the audio version, going on Apple Podcasts, subscribing to the show, and leaving a short review and a starred rating. That's a really big help. So that's it. Thank you guys for tuning in. I'm, again, still not sure. I just got back to Peru, so I'm trying to figure out the order of the guests. But I have some really good guests coming up. And I hope you all enjoyed this episode and that you will stay tuned for the next ones as well. So thank you very much, everyone. I appreciate it, and I will see you on the next episode.